Councillor Murphy. Councillor Norris. Councillor O'Farrell.
Sure, Karen.
Councillor Riley.
Online, Karen.
Councillor Tierney.
Here, Karen.
And Councillor O'Neillis.
Sure.
Thank you, members.
So I'll read out the broadcast statement here. I would like to remind everyone physically present at this meeting or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council Privacy Notice may be found on the Council website, www.derrystrabane.com. So I'd like to welcome all members and invited guests along to discuss the recent attacks in the city and district which have happened over the past few weeks. Our mayor is online and we hope that she will be able to join in at some stage. There was a wee bit of technical difficulties because she would like to chair this meeting from online, her position, and she's out in America at the moment. So I will start this off by welcoming all the women's groups here. And I know that I think we have from Foyle Women's Information Network, Catherine Cook and Cassie Jane Buckley, who will co-present the presentation jointly prepared by Foyle Women's Information Network, Waterside Women's Centre, Dr. Maria Hearn is here, Derry Well Women's Centre, Karen Meehan and Mary Claire McLaughlin. Over there, Derry Women's Centre, Catherine Barr, Strathfoyle Women's Centre, Denise Goodwin. And we also, after that, have Foyle Women's Aid, Mary Brown, NSPCC, Margaret Gallagher, and PSNI, Chief Superintendent Gillian Kearney, and PS Vaughan here as well. Yeah, my eyesight's awful. We have no glasses on here. So you are all very welcome here today, and we'll kick off proceedings with Catherine and Cassie, who will present first on behalf of Foyle Women's Information Network.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, elected members, council staff and invited guests. Thank you very much for inviting us to attend the special council meeting. My name's Catherine Cook and I'm the Director of Foyle Women's Information Network, and alongside me is my colleague Cassie Jane Buckley. She's the Communications Officer. This afternoon we have been invited here to address the issue of the increase in violence against women and girls. Slide 2. So who are we and who do we represent? A wee bit of background. The groups highlighted here have met collectively as a sector representing women. And we all agree that it is only through a collaborative approach across society and government that we can start to build transformative change. This is everyone's problem, and solving it will need action by everyone. We've come up with feedback from our members and our users, along with a series of recommendations that we hope the Council will take on board and implement. The table on the slide is a summary of the breadth of services and support provided to women who come from a diverse range locally and are minorities who are new to the city. We hope that there's an opportunity for you as councillors to interact with the groups after the meeting. Next slide. So why we are here. 98% of women in Northern Ireland have experienced at least one form of violence or abuse in their lifetime. 7 out of 10 women reported experiencing some form of violence or abuse in the last 12 months. 50% of those surveyed experienced at least one form of violence or abuse before they were 11 years old. And 73% of girls aged between 12 and 17 are reported to having experienced at least one form of violence in their lifetime. And these stats came directly from the Northern Ireland Executive Office's strategy for ending violence against women and girls. Sometimes we think that violence is only physical. However, violence against women and girls takes many forms. It ranges from everyday misogynistic attitudes and damaging social norms to harmful, unwanted behaviours and serious criminal offences. It is overwhelmingly, but not exclusively, carried out by men. Next slide.
Thank you, Catherine. So we are Foyle Women's Information Network, and what we do is we collect information and signpost people to information. And we've had a lot of information brought to us this week, mostly from our members and the other women's groups here from their members. And these are a few direct quotes that we've had from women across the week in light of the recent attacks in the city. You can see there's themes of not feeling safe to walk out in the dark, mothers not knowing what to tell their 13-year-old daughters how they can be safe, not noticing an increase in the PSNI presence, and people who have come home to settle and they've now decided that they want to emigrate again. These are all themes and feelings that none of us want anyone in our city to be feeling. And whilst we do want to offer women a safe space to share their experiences, this is only a sample of maybe over 100 messages that we've received in this past week. We want to talk about action. Next slide, please. So this week, we put out a call to our members and our colleagues, to their members too, about what people need to feel safe practically and what actions we can take today. These are by no means long-term fixes, but really we want to talk about what women can do to feel safe now, to walk out in the streets, feel empowered and feel confident as they deserve to be. So with our social media channels, we put out what would practically make you feel safer in the city. At Fwyn, we also held a focus group to try and get some real actionable next steps that we're going to recommend to you today. Next slide, please. So these are the key themes of the data that we collected. You can see there are a sample of direct quotes there. And the main issues that came up is improvements to safety and security enhancements, lighting, CCTV, increased police presence and accountability for the police, transportation and travel safety, regular taxi checks, safety on public transport, community-based initiatives. I think we've all seen how incredible our community's been this past week in stepping up. Support measures and self-defense, giving them the information to know legally what's within their right to defend themselves. And obviously, as what we all want is cultural and systemic change, but we know that's not going to happen today. Next slide, please. So we've taken all of this information this week and we sat down with our colleagues, with our other women's groups, to see practically what the key themes are and what we would like to see you as council take forward today. We would like these actions to be measured. We don't want the conversation to end today. We would love to engage with you in future to put out some KPIs on all of these actions so we can really see the change that's happening. And we'd also like a timescale of when these changes can start taking place. Next slide, please. In the 10 recommendations we have the recommendation at the top, actions that we'd like to see in putting this forward, and the impact that we believe this will make. So number 1, endorse and mobilise a Reclaim the Night march. Reclaim the Night has been going on since the 70s. It happens all over the UK. Our closest Reclaim the Night happens in Belfast, which has been going for 11 years. This format of an event is speeches at the beginning and then marching women and men to come together in support of reclaiming the night for women and empowering them to feel safe in their own city. So at the end of November, we have the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, and we think it's very timely that this is taken forward in that time. Next slide, please. We would like the council to mobilise their communications team. You guys have got a great communications team to put out two specific campaigns. The first around respect, consent, particularly aimed at young people. And then we would also like a second awareness campaign, potentially in partnership with PSNI, to talk about women's safety and key services that are available to women that we might not know about. You might find in some of these recommendations that work is already going on. And if that's the case, women don't know about it. And so I think just as much about this is awareness as well as action. So awareness campaigns across all of your channels, social media, to really push out these vitally important educational pieces. Next slide, please. A town hall meeting for community dialogue. We've seen there is a public meeting that's happening next week, which is women and LGBT safe only. We also believe that a town hall where everyone in the community can come together to share their thoughts, their concerns, and their ideas for how we as a community can tackle this. We would like this to be mobilised through the Mayor's office, again to take place during the 16 days of activism for gendered violence, and to have an open discussion about how we together can move forward. Next slide, please. Improved lighting and CCTV public safety measures. I don't think I've realised more than this past week how many lampposts I go past that aren't turned on or aren't working. So again, this might be ongoing work, but awareness needs to be made about what audits are happening in this area. How do we know what our CCTV coverage is like? Are there any gaps in that? And we would really urge the council to work with the PSNI and Department of Infrastructure to really see where we are at risk, where there are gaps, and what can be made quickly, but also what ongoing improved processes can there be to make sure that visibility is not hindered. Another consideration that we received from a focus group this week is other obstacles to visibility, things like tree coverage, and one woman in particular with the work going on in Foyle Street, and we've got the big construction site in the middle of Foyle Street with the big blockades. The visibility when she was walking down there, and two, what she says, very innocent men came to approach her. Despite the men not having any ill intentions, she felt completely isolated because she realised no one else on the other side of the street could see her. So it's things like that to really have a wide eye on what risks are there, and is there anything that we can do, like maybe putting perspex up or something like that, that can help with more specific visibility issues in high-risk areas. Next slide, please. The last one for me is implement the Ask for Angela initiative across licensed premises. For those who don't know, Ask for Angela is a process to help those in crisis in hospitality venues. So say you're on a bad date, it's taken a turn and you need some help. You can go up to a bouncer, you can go up to a bartender or a manager and say, hey, is Angela working tonight? And that's their cue to know that you're in trouble and you need assistance. This is a scheme that it's been fantastic to see. So many bars have come out this week to implement it, but I wish they happened before this week. The council give out licenses, and I saw in the journal this week that a new bar has been approved for Waterloo Street. What I want to know is, was the Ask for Angela initiative talked about? Is it something that can easily be put in place in the licensing process? And is it something that you can work with licensed venues on ongoing to make sure all of these actions aren't responsive, but proactive? Thank you.
Next slide, please. This slide's around proactive checks on road taxis. This recommendation is to work in partnership with taxi firms and the PSNI. There is a reason why the taxi industry is heavily regulated. However, some road taxis do exist. And some taxi drivers have come forward this week to speak to us and said that they're nervous and they're not going to work. because they feel unequipped in the situation that they find themselves in. So we believe that a proactive check on road taxis, along with the existing taxi companies and the PSNI, to bring awareness on self-protection for the taxi driver and how to keep your passengers safe. The impact of this will enhance the safety of everyone who uses the taxis, reduce the risk of harm from rogue operators, and promote trust in local transport services. Next slide. This is to work again with TransLink to improve public transport safety. For instance, I'll give you an example. I was in Dublin on Tuesday and I came back to Drumahoe Park and Ride at 10 o'clock on Tuesday night, and the bus driver dropped me off, me and another lady, and just drove off again. You were kind of left standing in a dark park and ride. So, you know, even just awareness raising that if the driver had stayed there for a couple of minutes to ensure that you get into your car safely, it would have ensured that as women we were feeling safe. So we need to engage with TransLink to review and improve staff training on passenger safety, develop protocols for supporting women who feel unsafe on public transports, and promote safety measures and staff awareness throughout the council and the TransLink about these campaigns, so that women feel safer and more confident using the services. Next slide. Slide 8 is to engage with men's groups for campaigns. All men's groups, we have them, men's sheds, we have spaces in cafes and throughout the city where there's chat spaces. These are essential. Maybe we should be using them to educate members in eliminating violence against women and girls, but also create a space where they can reflect on their own fears and feelings and get support. In this city, Men's Action Network, they lost its funding after providing 30 years of services to men in the area of male domestic and sexual abuse, violence, coercive control, awareness, mental health, and counselling support. My question is, where do their clients now go for help and support? So the impact in addressing men's mental health and promoting positive masculinity will contribute to cultural change. It'll help reduce violence and support communities' well-being. Next slide. We would like this council to reinstate the women's officer position within Derry City and Strabane District Council. It is 9 years since we had a women's officer, and we used to be held up as a model of good practice to other council areas, and we call for this position to be reinstated. We believe that a dedicated women's officer will ensure a sustained and strategic approach to addressing women's issues, will help empower communities and influence positive change. They help to gender the agenda and have a role in policy development. TEO have, as we know, their eliminating violence against women and girls strategy. Coming down the line, there is going to be a local change fund, which will be allocated to the 11 local councils for delivery and addressing the elements of the strategy. So maybe we could work closely with council in ensuring that this money goes to where it's most needed. Next slide. So this is to endorse and mobilise an International Women's Day event. The International Women's Day has been around for over 100 years, as have many of the issues that we're still talking about, and that still have an impact on women's advancement. And together we, as in the women's sector and council, can forge women's equality and safety by working together. Collaboration is key to advancing women's equality. And council can share their progress at this event by, as Cassie said, we have 10 asks. Those are our 10 recommendations, but we would ask that they publicly share the progress they have made on these recommendations if they're passed. We would like a time frame where we can hold council responsible for their actions or lack of them. And we just want to thank very much our local councillors for inviting us to come along here today and allow the women's sector to put forward these 10 recommendations. And we hope that you take them seriously and implement them going forward. Thank you. We now, next slide, any questions?
Thank you, Catherine and Cassie, for that there. I'm going to try the mayor once again here. So, Lillian, if you want to basically go ahead and try.
Can everybody in the chambers hear me? I think people online can hear me. So if Darren, you want to confirm if people from the chamber can hear me?
You have to put your mic on, Darren.
Can you hear me?
So, we're okay there, Lillian. We can hear you now. So go ahead.
Oh,
Mayor.
brilliant.
All yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Guy, for stepping in a very short notice and for doing a fantastic job so far. Apologies, members, for the disruption, and thank you for being so understanding. I'm joining you from Island House in New York, so please bear with me if the internet is not as good. And Ellen and Karen are in hand to help, and Darren will be there too. I will start by thanking the women organization for coming together at very short notice to address this critical issue. And may I thank Catherine and Casey for the powerful presentation with stark statistics and responses from women. Members, I'm going to allow questions after every presentation so that we can do justice to all the organizations that are here. So if you can just indicate, and Ellen will let me know who has indicated first to speak or to ask a question, and comments also if you wish to make any comments. And for those online, please just indicate through the online chat and I will bring you in. Do we have any questions for Catherine and Casey? Okay, Chelsea?
I just want to thank Catherine, Cassidy, and the rest of the speakers for coming here. But I just want to declare an interest that Catherine Cook is my mother. So just let me know. Just wanted to put it out there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alderman Cook. Can I bring you in, Councillor Logue?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Catherine and Cassidy for their presentation. You know, some of them statistics are very, very scary reading. But before I would say anything, I just want to say that our thoughts are with those women who have been attacked most recently within our council district, and we wish them all a speedy recovery. I live just a few doors down from one of the women that was attacked, and it's an area, it's on the same street as I live, and you know, walk there every day and night. And I would like to continue to do that, as would all the residents of our council district, that we should be able to go out, walk in any area and be assured that we don't have that fear, because I think that fear of violence can sometimes, you know, take over and stop you doing things that you would normally do. Just want to commend you on bringing on those 10 actions. I do think that they're all very valid. We certainly need to look at them all in more detail. I do think that one, that's a very simple thing that a bus driver could do, or a taxi driver. Wait till the people actually get into their homes. You know, it's a small thing, but it can have a big, big impact. We mentioned about the new bar opening and that getting passed. I was part of that planning committee, that was on, and but hopefully that can be included within the licensing. The conditions are put on, and it is good to see that a lot of the bars and restaurants and other facilities are rolling out that Ask for Angela campaign. I do know a lot of the bars within the area had been doing it prior to this, because personally I had somebody call actually say to me, and I think it was last year, that it was one of the workers that they didn't actually know about that Ask for Angela. So it was new. Obviously, when they went to work, they were told about it. So it's good that that establishments are actively rolling that out and should continue to do so. But I think, I think education is the main thing. A lot of domestic violence happens within the home. And unfortunately, a lot of people who are experiencing domestic violence, especially young people who are very much influenced by their surroundings and whatever, they don't actually realise that they're living in a domestic violence situation. So I do think that there's roles for schools, there's roles for youth clubs, there's roles for sporting organisations, and I do know my colleague here, Aisling, has just told me about how Derry City have come out, Derry City Football Club, and supported that. And we need more organisations to come out, stand up and recognise it, and do what they can regarding education, because I do think that is key. It's okay putting up all these security measures, but we really need to knuckle down and get to the nut of the problem. But certainly all of the 10 actions, they certainly need more discussions. And as I said, they're all very, very valid. Congratulations on putting this together. And I would think that looks now like a blueprint for us to work with. And hopefully we will have more further discussions about this, and clear measures are taken to implement a lot of what's on this document. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Logue. Can I bring in Councillor McDade?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you so much to Cassie and Catherine for coming in and for representing the other women's groups. I'm conscious that your presentation was a cumulation of work that you have been doing together. So thank you so much for that. I agree with what's already been said. I think your 10 recommendations, they're definitely the blueprint there. I don't think this is at this stage of the meeting, it isn't about motions. Because I know Alderman Cook has a motion that she's going to bring later, and we can work around that as well. So I suppose just picking up on a couple of things. Oh my God. The licensing piece. I know that we had in one of the community meetings a couple of months ago, we had talked about safe spaces for women, and the end and the strategy that's coming from Stormont. And one of the things that I had brought up was about within our planning committee, can we be thinking about safety for women with every application coming through? So it's really good, actually, that's very specific about Ask Angela, if there is going to be a hospitality sentence with something, just even for the planning committee to be very aware of. I think Patricia's dead right. It's about education. I've said this so many times this week, trying to explain it to people, that I have 3 young boys in my house, and I don't want them growing up, one, of course, not to ever attack or say anything in any way wrong to a woman, but I also don't want them to grow up in a society where a woman might be afraid of them because they're walking down a road. So it's about starting for our generation now, we need to make sure that women feel safe, but for the next generation, we need to make sure that they never have to have this conversation. And it's interesting, Catherine, you said Women's Day has been around, International Women's Day is around for 100 years, and so are all these problems. So we can't leave it another 100 years. We need to do something now. And I do think that the first step for the next generation is that education piece. If it's in primary schools, that's, having those conversations in the home with the wee ones and saying,
if there's a joke that's aimed at a woman, whether it's funny or not in their opinion, do not laugh. You know, it's up to our men here not to laugh. Set an example, because that's low level misogyny, and then that builds. And the majority of men won't turn into someone who's going to attack a woman, but some will, and that's the first level, accepting that that's okay, that they laugh at a joke at a woman's expense. So I think there's loads of work to be done. There's great recommendations there that I think, to me, the majority of them look very practical and able to be implemented. So no, thank you so much. We've got loads to think about. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the presentations, but thanks for coming on. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McDade. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in, and thank you to Catherine and Cassie today for coming in and making the presentation, and thank you to all the women's sector organisations that are here and that have worked on this. And I think it is a very thorough document, and I think it deserves full discussion by Council, item by item. And I think a lot of these measures will need to be put in place to make women and girls feel safer in our city as quickly as possible. And I think that that's what people want. People want to see institutions and organisations reacting right now as quickly as possible and doing everything we can to reduce people's fear and to begin to systematically address these issues. So I'm glad that you've asked for a time frame, because I think that that's very, very important, because we should at a certain point have something to come back. And a lot of these issues that these recommendations will involve the council collaborating with other bodies. I mean, when you think about lighting, that's going to include DFA. That means that the funding has to be there for that, and we can't be told it isn't. But that is how it'll have to work. So it'll have to be a collective effort to make this a possibility and make it a reality. And I think that it's right to say that the council and other entities and other organisations need to be held accountable. So I think that these are absolutely right, and I think we very much welcome that. I know we've talked less about it, and I'm not going to speak for too long because I know we've got quite a few presentations, but I do think what you've said about education is absolutely critical, because these are all preventative measures to keep people safe. What we want is a society where misogyny doesn't exist. And I think that that's what we have to aim for. And I think that that has to be set out as our goal. So for me, look, we have RSC, and a programme now of RSC. Young people from a very early age need to learn about healthy relationships. They need to learn about sexuality. They need to learn what consent is. Most people grow up with no idea of what consent is. People grow up with no idea of what a healthy relationship is. People grow up believing women are inferior. That is what a lot of young boys are taught. I think that this is what we have to grapple with. So our goal is equality and equality in thinking. And I think so the education part and the cultural change part is absolutely vital. And I think that has to run through all of our institutions if we want to actually cleanse them and cleanse society fully of misogyny. And the second point I'll just make, look, violence is at the centre of this, and the vast majority of attacks on women are not happening in alleyways. They're happening in places that are far more familiar. And that's why this has to be systemic about change in society. We can't glorify violence, whether it's happening overseas, and then expect that the people who are carrying it out or justifying it are going to act like different individuals when they come back here in their domestic relationships, when they're part of communities. So that seems to me, in terms of the education, if we want a systemic change, that we have to be looking at that while we're putting in place urgently these measures that are going to allow women to be safer and to feel safer as quickly as possible. But thank you again for coming in.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin and Alderman Middleton, and welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in. Thank you for your kindness. And also thank you to Catherine and Cassie, as well as all the women's organisations who worked really hard to put this presentation together. I also would like to thank the PSNI and NSPCC for your representation here today. We're thankful for your presence, but also for your tireless work for our citizens that you all do each and every day. Today, I speak not only on behalf of the DUP, but also personally for myself and also each and every female that I am proud to know. I've spent much time over the past week in light of the deplorable attacks speaking to many women from all walks of life. And these discussions that I've had have been difficult, but they've been around, and this includes myself, our increased fear, but also how to most effectively keep safe every day. I find it very sad that when I'm speaking right now, I'm talking about fear that has increased, which indicates that we're all fearful to some level every single day. This is like unacceptable. I must be really clear when I say that all girls and women in our society should feel safe. They should feel 100% safe all of the time in every regard, whether alone or in groups, whether in daylight or in darkness. There's no excuse for us not to feel safe. May the innocent victims of the recent attacks know that we're all with them, we're standing with them, and we're thinking of them. And may we take action as well. And may they know that we truly care. Like, you don't have to be a female to know that misogyny and violence, abuse and attacks against females is completely and utterly wrong. It's disgusting, and it's also unwelcome. I would call today on our council, on each and every one of us, to take action and to take every possible action that we can to tackle not only the recent attacks, but also the misogyny that sadly we as women face every single day. We need to see urgent action put in place, not just warm words. The consequences of not prioritising these actions is dire. Now is the time for us to put our political differences aside, and I really truly mean that for all of us. We need to show that we care, and we need to show that we're not just about words, that we are about actions, and show that all the females that we know, that we're prepared to come together and that we're able to protect them, that we will protect them. My daughter, Eliana, is just 5 months old, and I really want her to grow up to be a young woman who is not afraid, who is not intimidated, who is not belittled, who knows how to show respect, but who gains and has respect without having to work for it as well. Likewise, my son David is 7 years old, and my husband and I have brought him up to be respectful, to be loving, and to cherish women. Education very much starts at home. I completely concur with the previous comments. However, as a council, we can talk about education, but we need to act. We have a major part to play, and I really hope that we can look back on this meeting today as a day where we all came together, we listened to the experts, we spoke on behalf of all women, and that when we look back on this meeting, this is a real pivotal moment for us all. And do you know what? Personally, it's not just a hope for me. I am willing to do whatever we need to do to put action in place. So thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you, Alderman Middleton, for that. Alderman Cook, are you looking to come in?
Mayor, sorry, it's just in regards to
Go ahead, Alderman Cook. Alderman Cook, can you hear me?
Mayor, we're going to bring her in at the end because she has a proposal. So she
All
does
right.
what she wants to. I was from another committee, and they asked her to bring it along to this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. Then I'll bring Alderman Hussein in.
Thank you, Mayor. And like others, can I thank the women who have got together and come in for their presentation today. I think Councillor Harkin referred to it and others have indicated towards it. We're looking at a societal issue, a societal problem that requires societal solutions. And as you have highlighted in your presentation, community dialogue can be at the centre of that. And I think, in fairness to the Minister, Naomi Long, she did say, this is not just about the current, it's about the background that needs to be addressed with regard to all of this, and that's long term. But there is an immediacy, and immediacy of action that is needed. And on that basis, can I congratulate Councillor McDaid for her initiative this afternoon, and my apologies. I can't be there, but I wish well to all who are being involved in that. That's an action, and it's an awareness raising action, which is vital as well. There are particular actions that can be taken. Council itself has agreed to the creation of safe spots, and other institutions, organisations should be brought in on board. So there are places where people can go when they feel that they're under threat. The Ask for Angela, I welcome that programme within. I'm a publican myself, and I know that there are those who are well aware of this particular initiative, but not all are. And somebody has suggested that within the licensing, when you apply for your entertainment license, there's a box that you can tick, yes, we are aware. And it's simply being aware of, if somebody asks for Angela, what that means. I know in my own business, I have had this once has occurred, and it turned out it was a perception as opposed to an actuality. But the fact for that particular individual was the security of knowing that there was help there if it had been needed. The Reclaim the Night, is that, this is a question, I suppose, that can be answered later. Reclaim the Night, will that apply to Londonderry as well? Because I note it's Reclaim the Night in Belfast. And as folk will know, we here in this part of the world think we deserve our own scenario, which is part of a perhaps province-wide scenario. And I notice there's 16 days of action there. And I suppose that could lead me into in item 10, Catherine, you referred to Derry women. I think it applies to women wherever. And I'm mindful of that because this is Derry and Strabane, and we have the rural hinterland that I often concern myself with. CCTV and lighting, absolutely, and it is an issue that comes up in this chamber where we do seek to improve, particularly lighting. Councillor or Alderman Kerrigan will be well aware of a situation in my own area, Castlederry, where we're seeking lighting to improve that situation. With regard to CCTV, my understanding is in the city there is an excellent CCTV provision within the city. That's my understanding, and it has assisted particularly PSNI in scenarios, but that is to be welcomed that it actually exists in the city. Taxis, again, the registered proper taxi firms, I understand are good in the city. I understand, for example, they have tracking systems that when somebody takes a taxi, they are tracked and people know where the taxi is. And it's the irregular taxis where the situation needs to be addressed, strongly addressed. And I understand, Catherine, you referred to drivers saying, look, no, I'm out of this, and I can understand that as well. But those are responsible taxi drivers, and we want to keep those on board, because if you take them out, it leaves room for the irresponsible taxis to come in. I wasn't aware that there was a women's officer, and judging on the time span, I suspect that was a Derry City initiative that wasn't carried through into the new amalgamated council. I don't know, but it's certainly something that I think we as a council should be considering. But thank you for your presentation, very much appreciated, and look forward to the community dialogue going forward that can address the root causes at the back of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alderman Jose. Can I also bring in now Alderman Guy?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Catherine and Cassie, and everyone else that's came here along today. I want to just go back and perhaps say that I was one of the responsible taxi drivers that my colleague has spoke about for 15 years. That was my full-time work, full-time employment. And I know how those drivers must be feeling. And I know that they are scared and they're vulnerable. And when you sit back on what you actually do as a taxi driver, you're probably in the most vulnerable job in the world. You sit in a car with no protection around you, you're lifting strangers, you don't know what's going to happen. Alderman Hussey did speak about illegal taxis and so on, and it was a problem, but I'd like to say that all taxis are stringently tested, stringent checks through Access NI. However, recent sexual attacks on ladies in taxis were carried out by actual taxi drivers who are registered to their whatever taxi association that they work with. And that's the worrying thing. I have 2 daughters, like many people in here as well, and my wife, and I tell them when they go out, get a photograph of the badge. If the taxi driver's genuine, he won't care. You know, and I remember that, like, we had, I'll tell you a story. So basically lifted a fare from the office door, took it to the town centre, noticed that one of the girls was heavily intoxicated, but they were obviously off their head and drugs as well. So the other girl says, take her home. I says, well, hold on a minute. I says, I'll take her home, but yous are coming with me. So I took them to the house. I says, I'll bring these back to the town centre. Took them to the house. They took the girl to the door. I still remember the squeals of her mother when she came to the door. Now, the fella came out and thanked me for actually bringing her back home. I left those girls back to the city centre. I also had a policy of, if 4 ladies got in the car with me, the most drunk one was getting left home first. And I don't mean to sound as if I'm putting something on women, which I'm not. What I'm trying to say is taxi drivers feel vulnerable. So they should basically be sensible in the way that they treat their customers, and they should be leaving themselves in no position that they can actually be, well, basically held responsible for something. However, those taxi drivers who have sexually assaulted women should, I always believe that the crime, or sorry, the time should fit the crime. And sadly, the judicial aspect of it is lacking in adequate sentencing. And I think that's something that we can all agree on here. But just to look, as I say, the taxi drivers will not, a good taxi driver will not care if you take their badge, even their number. They won't care. They've nothing to hide. They're out there trying to make a living, and they're trying to get people home safe. But they need to be, you know, people need to feel safe, and they need to feel that they can stop a car and knowing it's a registered taxi and get into that taxi. And I know the police have carried out patrols in the past which have worked, and it's a great idea. You stop the person when they leave a person off, and you find out, and you give that person the chance to become legal. And most of them do. Most of them have done that in the past. And I think it maybe needs to be carried out on a more often and more make more presence in that there. But thanks, Senator. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Alderman Guy. I see that Councillor Jason Barr has just indicated to speak. Councillor Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor, and thanks to the 2 ladies for the presentation. Apologies, I was late to miss most of it. But I just want to start by saying that I totally condemn the recent attacks of the violence against women in our council. It is utterly unacceptable that anyone should live in fear because of their gender. And as a father of a 7-year-old daughter, I am particularly concerned about the world she is growing up in. Sorry, excuse me. The thought that she might face intimidation or violence simply because she is a girl is something that weighs heavily on me. We must acknowledge that the issue goes beyond just individual acts of violence. It is a reflection of deeper societal problems. To truly address violence against women, we need to start educating our young boys about respect and equality from an early age. It is crucial that we teach them that they should never feel superior to anyone, particularly women. They must understand that strength is not about dominance, but about kindness, empathy, and support. Men have a vital role to play in this conversation. We need to foster an environment where boys grow into men who challenge harmful stereotypes and speak out against misogyny. It is not enough to simply condemn violence. We must actively work to change the attitudes and beliefs that allow it to persist. As 40 councillors on this council, we need to come together as a community to support initiatives that promote education and awareness around these issues. We can create safe spaces for dialogue, workshops, and programmes that engage young people in conversations about respect and equality. By doing this, we can then help ensure that our daughters and all women in our community can grow into a world free from fear. Together, we can build a future where violence against women is not tolerated and where respect is the norm. So let's commit to this change here today, not just for our daughters, but for every single person and woman who is living in fear within our community today. Thank you for the time, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jason Barr. I am going to bring in now Mary Brown from Women's Aid because they have to leave soon. We were supposed to go directly to Dr. Maria Heron from the Waterside Women's Centers. If you don't mind, can we swap just to ensure that we accommodate them too?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invite. I didn't realise that we've all sort of got a last minute sort of invite, so I put together something very quickly. Having said that, I would agree with everything that has been said already in terms of what's needed. I suppose I looked at what has been happening in terms of domestic violence, and I did do a quick consultation with some of the service users in the city. I'm speaking also from Foyle Women's Aid, but the Family Justice Centre, and if you know that that's now in Bishop Street, and the reason we moved to putting the Family Justice Centre there was to be wider. Somebody alluded to, yes, this has all been happening for a long time to women, and the Family Justice Centre is about a quicker human rights-based pushing the agenda about rights for women quicker, because we have had the same things happening, not enough changing, and not enough change in order to give women the rights and the safety that they deserve. So that was why we put together the Family Justice Centre. If we can go to the next slide. Yeah. This is just an example, and I have talked to women, and they get asked all of the time, why don't you just leave? Why are they staying there? And they get blamed, and we, victim blaming is one of the things that happens with women, and especially in domestic violence. And that's sort of the pathway out, which is we tracked women on their pathway out. Because they weren't getting out sometimes. They were exhausted. They were going to a range of places to see a range of different people all of the time, sometimes with no money, sometimes with children, and we've made the access out impossible for them. So that's why we decided to put together the Justice Centre, and Women's Aid go in alongside of our partners and bring partners in and make the access to justice quicker. So that is just one of the things, and it's still very much a work in progress. If we go on there. The homicide statistics for Northern Ireland, evidence for support for the family justice model is the homicide statistics for Northern Ireland, the domestic violence crimes statistics for Northern Ireland, the high rates of children going into care, Ray Jones' report, the independent review of children's services, a lot of victim blaming here in the city. We actually provided Ray Jones with 40 case studies of women who came in and gave over their own personal stories so that they would be included in that report. And I have to say the Ray Jones review is very slow, and we would like to see more happening on that. Homicide reviews. Homicide reviews are happening, and we've been certainly involved in them, and a range of agencies across Northern Ireland. what we are finding is it's taken us more time to sit in homicide reviews than we are seeing change to actually prevent the homicides happening. So that is an issue that should be everybody's, should be attention for everybody. Suicide rates in Northern Ireland, we're waiting on the legislation, but we're seeing women completing suicide quite often on a monthly basis at least, and we meet them, and those deaths aren't really being counted as victims of homicide, whereas they are ending their lives themselves. Some of them say it will be quicker. All of our workers are talking to women who are sitting with tablets or some form of way of ending their lives, and it is quite stressful for them. The yearly cost of homicide for Northern Ireland, the last estimate was 1.6 million. It's probably 2 million now. So we know there's a cost, and I mention the cost because that's what governments pay attention to. If we were to prevent these, and if we were to spend as much money in on women when they're in the early stage, or if we were to do more prevention, we could actually prevent this, and we could save money. Women's Aid in England have started to deliver joined up models. And that's something we're glad that we're ahead of the curve here. And we are looking to work wider and with more of our partners. And it's also an invest to save model. We know that across the areas that there's less and less resources, and there's less being spent on these issues. Some of the partners are already there. We work with everybody across the board, and we continue to do that. The more we work together, the more we solve problems, and the more that we put things together on one agenda, the more successes we will have. What are our asks? We would like cross-party political action. We need parties to come together, and we need departments to come together, because this won't be solved by one partner or one department or another. It needs justice, it needs communities, it needs everybody together, and it means a very joined up way of working, because that way we then can do more. We need ring-fenced funding for agencies working directly with domestic abuse services. We've seen that money came out in the past, and certainly over COVID. We stayed open. We worked with over 30% more victims. But during COVID, the money that was ring-fenced for domestic violence never hit domestic violence services. The Barnett consequentials never hit the women's groups, all of whom are still working. So we need to know that that's ring-fenced and that it doesn't go to other pockets, that it's very clearly ring-fenced and focused on the issues that we're all talking about today. We need recognition and support to reform the systems that are currently not working for all victims in Northern Ireland, and that's everybody who suffers, and that's women and men. We have systems that are archaic, they're not working. They need to change. We're trying to fit people into systems and they don't fit into. I talked to the women, you know, about how they were feeling, and some of the women in our services were saying to be mindful that they live this every day, and that they are concerned about the messaging, that they shouldn't have to keep themselves safe. It's up to the government, the community, and everybody in it to keep everybody safe. And women shouldn't be different, and they shouldn't be. They're saying we come in to be empowered, and we are empowered to be different and to go out there, not to go out to a community where we have to, you know, do other things because we're women. We want the same rights and the same safeties as every woman. So they're very clearly saying that. They're saying that domestic violence behind closed doors is equally as important as a woman being assaulted on the street. They're saying even in terms of if they were to retaliate, at home, they would actually be arrested, and I think Gillian would be in agreement, and they have been arrested at times for self-defending when they've been attacked. So we need to be careful about the message and what we're saying to them. They want the rights and they want the opportunities to be safe, and they want the services to be able to be there. 2 of the women that I talked to have already taken cases to court. They were kicked out by the PPS, saying they hadn't enough evidence, even though they'd gone through quite substantial forensics. That is not working. And we're encouraging people to come forward. We're encouraging people to talk to the police. But if they go through all those processes and they get to a certain point and it's kicked out, it's really detrimental. So we know that there's a lot of women not reporting as well, and we need to start to address how we do that. And we have some things in action. We know all women aren't going to court, and we got a court system starting up in the Family Justice Centre. We're asking for a support for a zero tolerance proposal, and we worked separately, so it's great that we're all on the one page in terms of the women's groups to put strategies into action, and we're wanting words to action, and that's something that's coming from women are saying, you know, they need people to be doing something to help. We are seeing year on year, we are seeing more women affected and through domestic violence. We're seeing more children, and we have more young people. There are changes, but not enough and not quick enough. We've more young people coming through our services, and we've more older women in our services as well than ever before. And if you look at the homicides and the age ranges in homicides as well. So welcome the opportunity for this to be on the table. Welcome the opportunity to be with all my colleagues. And I think this is something that shouldn't die in the vine, that we would like to see a more proactive approach to really tackling domestic violence. In terms of, we have a vigil already planned for the 10th of December. Katie Simpson's aunt is going to talk about Katie and the impact, because they were a family that weren't listened to. And we have Montserrat's daughter going to send us a message, so that's going to run at the Guildhall. The mayor has agreed to turn off the lights. We'll have candles. Cams are going to be there in terms of providing songs and just, so it's just going to be more of a ceremony in memory of them. And the women who are living in our accommodation are talking about the fact that they have to be homeless in the first place. There's a whole range of issues of risk. I talked to Gillian about the risk that they're identifying about some of the housing that's here, and some of the housing that, and the people that are coming in for risky housing. There's a range of actions that we need to be looking, but they're saying to remember them all year round, because they're the survivors, not just the people that don't succeed, but the ones that are surviving, and their need for help in the communities and the communities to move into afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie, for that presentation, and thank you for coming at very short notice. I realized that we really needed to come together as women, and thank you so much for your response. This is incredible. Members, I will now open to the floor for questions and short comments to Marie. Any members who may have any questions? Okay, I do not see any indications there, unless there is an indication from, oh, Councillor Houghton.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. And thanks, Mary, for the presentation. And also I'd like to extend a thanks to Catherine and Cassie Jean as well. Patricia had covered all the stuff that was needed to be said there. But I just wanted to come in and speak about just how the communities have been affected, and looking at all the statistics that have been given out through your presentation and also your own. Mary, it is just so shocking and so worrying. And it's stuff that we knew was existing, but it's really coming to the forefront of everybody's thoughts and eagerness to help at the minute. So I think when it comes to domestic violence and violence against women and girls, this is something that's happening in all communities, and it's like crossing boundaries of age, race, it's all different backgrounds. So every section of community is affected. And I suppose we're also seeing it happening in public spaces. We're seeing it happening online. It's happening in workplaces. But the scary part of it all is that it's also happening in people's homes where they're supposed to feel safe and secure and not feel intimidated at all. So it's a human issue across the board. It's an issue that everybody needs to be speaking out about. But I think for today, the united force in this room is just really, really brilliant to see. Looking around the room, and I know you spoke about the cross-party political action, and I think when it comes to subjects like this, we are all united in relation to what we need to do to tackle the issues and prevent it from happening again. So thanking you very much. I know there was a piece of work put into bringing you all here today and getting this presentation, but just showing you as a community sector coming together and coming forward to make this happen. It's just brilliant. So I think going forward, what we need to be aiming to do is sort of changing the conversations and transforming the community so that they're safer. And also, I think that creating a lasting commitment here today that this, yes, we are reacting to what has happened in our city and district over the past 2 months, but it's creating that lasting commitment that we're all going to be committed together to carry out and fulfill the 10 actions that were presented in front of us today. And I just think, like, I'm a mother of 3 daughters. I'm a grandmother of 2 granddaughters. And it has been hard hitting as a mother, having to sit down and have those conversations with your child about their safety in their own home and in their own city and district. I suppose we sit our daughters down and we talk about smear screening, we talk about breast care and all stuff like that. This is now going to be another element of the conversation that's going to have to be added on. And I'm really, really interested to hear Margaret's presentation, because we can't scare them at the same time. So is it about us building conversation tools that parents can use at home, that teachers can use at schools, where we are protecting, but we're not scaring at the same time? I had been contacted by one of the schools earlier on today just to see what is this about today. Is there going to be any outreach? But I can speak to you all individually and send you this lady's email address, because it would be excellent if she did have a bit of communication with you all in relation to that. The taxi driver stuff was covered, and thank you for that, Darren, because I think that was something that was coming up a lot. As well, Patricia had mentioned about the clubs. The campaigns around the clubs in Derry City did come out in their black and white t-shirts at the last home game, but it's about all the clubs, the football, the Gaelic, the cricket, the boxing, all of that. I think it's important that the men are included in the campaign, because their voice also is important in relation to how maybe insecure they would feel at times, particularly what you spoke about, Darren, earlier. But as I say, the willingness and the skill in this room is what's going to be taking this forward, and the passion in this room, because the knock-on effect of what has happened, it is going into family homes. It is about having those difficult conversations, but there's also that trauma triggering for survivors of domestic abuse as well. So we have to keep there's a lot of stuff that this can trickle into, and I'm sorry if I'm keeping you too long, but it just really, really shows that we have to implement the violence against women and girls strategy, keep a focus there, keep our shoulders to the wheel, work together and do this together. So I want to say a massive thank you to you all for coming along today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Houghton. Members, I'm conscious that some of the presenters would like to leave soon, so I'm going to ask you that you please limit your comments to at least a maximum of 2 minutes to be fair to all of them, because we want to hear from everybody in the room today. I will bring in Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to everyone for coming along here today to present to us on what is a incredibly important issue. I have had some very interesting conversations over this last week to 10 days with women who I know on a personal level, who colleagues and constituents who are genuinely frightened and scared about going about their everyday business across this council district. I am a typical man. I didn't realise that this and the thought process that women have when they're doing simple things like going out of work, and when they see a man approaching them that they want to cross the road or they have keys in their hand. I spoke to one woman who takes a dog chain with her just to feel that little bit of extra protection. And I think that is absolutely crazy that women are having to do that. But I openly admit, I didn't think that it was at that level across this district. And Mary said, you know, you work with this every day. It's only really over this last 10 days that for me, there has been a light bulb moment that this is going on every day across this council district. We have recently supported a motion which was unanimously backed across this council around the safe space stuff, and the council are working through that motion now, and hopefully we will get an update on the outworkings of that very, very soon. But I think that's an important step as well. I think we have seen all of the groups coming together here today, and we will see more actions taking place this evening and over the weekend to send that message out of support and solidarity to women across this district, that this is a safe space and we are here and we will do whatever we can to support people and make them feel safe. I would love to be able to send that message out, but we have to implement the safety measures before we can do that. And whatever it takes to do that, it has to be done. The 10 key asks are really important. There's a lot of them which are, I suppose, very quickly turnaround time in terms of implementation, and we should be getting on with that. Mari talked about political action and cross-party support. I think you're hearing it today. I think people are seeing it over this last 10 days and how, and we'll continue to see it as we move forward. But I think we need to keep having these types of conversations and openly talking about how and what we need to do to make people feel safe across this district. But in terms of political action and cross-party support, I don't think that that's going to be a huge issue. I think everybody within this chamber is united in doing whatever we can to protect people, to make people feel safe, and whatever that takes is where we have to get to. But I think, and I think Aisling touched on it, the big thing in this for me is the implementation of the strategy, the violence against women and girls strategy, and how we can do that, the funding that is there to back it up and support it. And then we may be able to see things like the re-implementation, for example, of the women's officer, and other practical steps that we can take to make people feel safe. I, like many others, have a daughter, a wife and 2 sisters, etc. So this is everybody's problem and we all have to try and address it. After speaking to some of my colleagues and listening to some of the women over recent days, I had a conversation with my own wife and I asked her, would you feel like this when you're going out on your own walking at night? And her immediate response was,
No.
I wouldn't go out walking on my own at night.
Bar the fucking
It wasn't
school that they done every year.
Alderman,
At themselves in the back.
would you please switch off your mic? Nairi?
Speak new.
It wasn't even an option to even consider going out walking. It was just, I would not be doing that because, and that showed me very clearly the level of fear and what people are actually experiencing every single day. And although these recent attacks have been over this last 10 days to 2 weeks, this has always been a problem. And we now, as it's been highlighted, need to do whatever we can to try and address it. And personally, and as a party of the SDLP, are more than happy and more than willing to do whatever we can to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney, and apologies for that disruption. Alderman Jose?
Thank you, Mayor, and glad to come in again. Thank you for the presentation. One thing that I find important coming through in what you were saying was the issue of Barnett consequentials. And we know that Westminster doles out money to various schemes, etc. And we know that the Barnett consequentials are resultant in funding coming through to Northern Ireland. But the issue is then the distribution of that additional funding that comes. You refer to the addressing the needs and gaps in services. Again, from a cross-party perspective of addressing that, those needs and gaps will exist in departments throughout our executive, not just one department. Have you identified those needs and those gaps that we can take to the various ministers? For example, ourselves can take to the Minister for Health and say, what are you doing about this? You know, are you looking for funding for this? That somebody in communities can go to their minister and say, these are the issues that you need to be dealing with. You know, are you looking about the funding? Are you dealing with these services? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. You're on.
Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah,
maybe?
we can. Well, I can firstly start about the gap of funding for police service as well. That's that has been cut, and without police, it's really impossible to protect people. So that is one of the things that, you know, I have raised. In terms of the cuts to Women's Aid, we've been cut about 45%. We do double the work we do. We have waiting lists of 70 to 80 women a week. Those are one of the things, but all of the agencies that encompass that, but even funding for looking at joined up working and, you know, joined up strategies to work and look at women and girls and young people. That's sort of missing. And we had it years ago because we did it years ago. Margaret and I worked together years ago and we were doing more then than we are now, because to be honest, women and girls and young people have lost out. When things get tough, they're the first to go, they're the first to be dropped. So we're not valuing them. So we could very quickly put together some of the things, reform of the justice system, reform of the systems that happen, back to localisation. And I have said to Gillian about, since the PPUs come in, we have less of a local focus on domestic violence. When we had a local commander that was in charge of everything, it was managed here locally, so we could deal with our own issues. We could go in and talk and train. We've regionalised a lot of our stuff. And I think that our city has lost out as a result of that. So, you know, we should be citywide and regional. The Justice Centre is looking at local city issues, and then we're getting involved in regional issues. But we could look at a range of things where I think we've lost the autonomy here to sort our own city and Strabane out. And we did more of that a while ago than we do now. So it's reviewing the systems we have as well. And just looking at courts aren't working. They're not working. PPS and the police need to work together. We have a range of things that we've documented that needs to be addressed, and that could be done. We're wasting a lot of money by not working together, and we're wasting a lot of money and resources on housing when we should be proactively keeping families at home and removing perpetrators. But there's lack of joined up working in some of these initiatives. And you know, it's not always about money. It's about the joined up nature of how we should be working and the things we should be doing to keep people safe. Because housing's it's as big an issue for domestic violence victims now as anything else, because they're homeless for long periods of time. And we're also seeing women being put in very risky situations into local properties, and we're seeing people being removed from Belfast down into here and put in very risky properties, and we're seeing women at risk of landlords. So the houses that they're given to be in are actually a risk to them because of some of the behaviours. regulation of all of that needs to be, needs to come in. So there's lots of actions we could do that would reduce risk. It's just about formalising that and getting on with it and doing it.
Mayor, thank you through you for that, and I certainly would welcome the type of information that you've talked about there, and I'm sure our colleagues throughout the council would welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Guy. Would you like to come in, Alderman Guy?
No, sorry, Mayor, I was just sending you a message there through. So.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Sean Harkin.
Thanks again, Mayor, and thanks, Mary, for coming in today, and just to acknowledge the important work that your organisation does and that all the organisations that do here. They are vital for women and girls and play a hugely important role. And I think that, the cuts that you've just mentioned there are devastating. And I think as a council, we have to be advocating for proper funding for the women's sector to make sure people are supported and helped. And I think we have to make that a matter of urgency. And I think what you says there about, victim blaming, not victim blaming is so important, especially when it's domestic abuse and why don't people leave. And I think that the reasons for people not leaving dangerous situations are very complex. But I also think that, the housing crisis is part of that. And I think that this is where this is not an abstract thing. This is something that's being actively discussed in this council right now. It's being actively discussed in Stormont. And I think that that is contributing to the challenges and the dangers that women face. We need more housing. And that is one thing that needs to happen. We also need to look at our benefit system. We also need to look at wages and pay, because we have to facilitate people being able to, there's all sorts of, I look at it as the violence of poverty and the pressures that come into homes. And we have to look at how to address that if we want to actually grapple with the problem at its root. And then we also have to make sure people have actual pathways out. And when you are facing poverty, when you're facing homelessness, that is not a pathway out of a dangerous situation. So that, I think, as well might be the big issues, but I think we can't treat those issues as far away, because these are the issues right now that are being discussed. And we have to, while we're putting in place whatever kind of practical steps that are immediate, have to at the same time be looking at addressing those big issues. Otherwise, I don't see how we are going to, grapple with it in the way that I think everybody wants us to see us doing it.
But I just agree, a poverty strategy is vital. We're seeing poverty, the likes of which that I haven't seen in all my time working, it's getting worse. So we're seeing that, we're seeing child poverty, and we're also seeing poverty of families coming in as well. A lack of hope too, which, is really excruciating for the families coming to, and they aren't moving because of the housing situation. The latest homelessness programme, it was actually a woman and her 3 children that were put in a hotel for a period of time, and they had to get out every morning. And that still happens, irrespective of people saying it doesn't. We're picking up on that. So we need some form of change around that. But also we need to stop moving the families that are the victims out of homes and keeping them where they are, and having more justice in around them and circling support to them. So it's about changes of system, and we've been saying that, but poverty is a big one and child poverty is a big one.
Thank you. Okay, I think I have Councillor McDade looking to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And just very briefly, because I think it's been covered across the chamber, I agree entirely with everything that has been said, but I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things, because I think it's important to recognise that the people who are experiencing domestic violence day in, day out, there is a mood in the town at the minute about the violence that's happening on the streets. But this will be triggering for people who are living this day in, day out, and we need to be doing more. I mean, I nearly fell off my chair when he said about the funding that was, I think I picked up right, the funding that was supposed to be for domestic violence just never appeared, just didn't go into the domestic violence didn't make the go into the services. Like, we need to be looking at that and seeing, I think, from a point of view, all parties are going to come together here and back everything we need to do. We just then need to push it up to Stormont to make sure the departments come together and everyone feeds in the money that's needed from every department to make sure this happens, because it's not down to one minister, it's down to them all, because everyone needs to take this forward. And one other thing, just something that you said, Mary, was people said they shouldn't have to take steps to make themselves feel safe. 100%. That's what I've been saying all week. It's like, why is it up to the woman to change the route? So this is a conversation that I had with my colleagues this week. Why should I change my route when you don't have to change your route whenever I feel unsafe because you're a man and you're coming towards me? You know, there's a reason for that. Why should we have to take the steps? This is a societal thing that needs to change. This meeting and a rally and everything is all first starts, all first steps, but it's a bigger, broader piece of work that needs to be done across the community. But I want to just thank you for coming on and for all the work you do. I worked in mental health for a long time there in the trust, and I know the impact that your service has for a lot of the service users that I was working with. So I just want to thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDade. Members, I do not see anybody else indicating to speak on this particular presentation, so I am going to thank Marie for her presentation and invite Dr. Maria Heron of Waterside Women's Centre to make her presentation.
Hi, Mayor. It's not Dr. Maria Heron here. It's Margaret Gallagher from the NSPCC. Maria's here as part of the Women's Centre contribution, but I'm here and delighted to be invited to focus in on the children and young people, both who will experience a lot of the media that's gone out this week, a lot of the discussion in the area around what's been happening on the streets, but also to talk from an NSPCC perspective about the work we do to support children and young people. And interestingly enough, I think I've worked in every women's group. I see Derry Well Women are here. Foyle Women's Aid, I worked for a number of years, and I also worked in the Waterside Women's Centre and supported the Derry Women's Centre as well. And I think it is interesting to look at, as the NSPCC is one of the leading charities in the UK, one of the oldest charities in protecting children. But we're all voluntary sector, and we're responding to what is really a criminal justice and a societal issue. And if you note that every organisation within here, including ourselves, were set up by individuals, by groups of women in this town, Foyle Women's Aid, Derry Well Women, the Women's Centre, as individuals with no professional role at that time, who created organisations that had to seek funding, develop their own strategies to respond to what is really strategic issues that should be dealt with by a society, not by us as individuals, but every responsive agency that we have in this town came from individuals having to act and take on board to address, whether it was Women's Aid, whether it was the Women's Health, and the Women's Centres around capacity building, to try and support women and families, to redress inequalities that are systemic in our society, and to try and drive forward that strategic change. Now, that's not to say we're delighted. We have always had good council support, good government support, but we must look at the fundamental reason that we need to have UK-wide, Northern Ireland-wide strategies that address violence against women and girls, which we have. They have to be resourced. Mari has talked about the billions that domestic abuse costs. Then we must look at the funding plot. How do you expect to prevent domestic abuse and sexual violence against women and girls with small pots of money, which are really addressing major societal issues over decades? And unfortunately, I'm now at that age where I can't say it's over decades, because we've been doing this for 30 years. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now. You shouldn't let me near this mic, really, to be fair. So I've been waiting a long time to get up here. But really, you know, from Catherine's point of view, from Foyle Women's Information Network, I'm going to talk about NSPCC. 50% of abuse is happening before the age of 11. 12 to 17-year-olds, 70% of abuse. Unfortunately for the NSPCC, as the specialist charity over 134 years old, we're supporting children who've experienced sexual violence. We run the Let in the Future In programme adjacent to this building, where we have young people who've experienced children sexual violence. We work with a non-abusing parent. We have the Young Witness Service, which, like Foyle Women's Aid and their Justice Centre is helping those victims and those with lived experience of those crimes to try and make sense of the justice system, to try and give best evidence, to try and support them. And not always do they get justice, but it's to try and support them to ensure safety for the rest of our community. And these people who perpetrate violence are getting the justice that they need. We also run the Childline service. It's to your left again, above the Exchange restaurant. It's over 30, 40 years in existence. And we have volunteers from out this area that deliver that Childline service. We support children and young people up to the age of 19. And we support them to talk about any issue. And that's one of the things I want to talk about today is where do we support children and young people? How do we make them part of this dialogue? How do we make them part of this issue? And it is actually, we need to talk to children and young people about what they want. We need to hear their voices about how they want to be reached. We in the NSPCC have for too long not really had the participation strategy ourselves. We're now in a position where we're putting the voices of children and young people first in terms of listening to them to design interventions. And Childline is a listening service to those children about what they need. We have a policy and public affairs team. We're lucky we're a big enough organisation that does. So we're very, very engaged in the Assembly and in Stormont and in Westminster and in all our devolved nations. We have a domestic abuse recovery service as well. And similar to Mari, we work with those women. We hear their experiences and their children's about the lifetime impact that abuse has on them. And we have a school service called Speak Out, Stay Safe. Many of you have spoken today about the need to do preventative work, to do educational work, to do awareness raising work. Well, the best place to do that, we know from evidence, is in our school system. So we have a programme called Speak Out, Stay Safe that helps every child understand their rights, because this is about human rights and child's rights, the right to be safe from abuse, the right to be safe in your home, the right to be safe in your streets, and the right to respect others as well, and about respect and consent. I lead for the Talk Pants campaign across the UK. That is a sexual abuse prevention campaign. It is around remembering that your privates are private, always remember your body belongs to you, no means no, talk about secrets that upset you and speak out, someone can help. There are those fundamental messages that we need to layer from age 3 up. We are doing that with babies, with young toddlers, right through into our primary school. And then into our secondary school, we deliver Talk Relationships, a free programme across the UK to help our schools and our teachers. Our teachers do not go into the profession to become counsellors or social workers. We know that. That's not where they are. But we do know that under the curriculum, under the RSE curriculum, they are expected to deliver quite complex messaging around health relationships, around consent and various things. We must give them the support and the tools that enable them to deliver effective, competent, consistent RSE education in our schools. It is fragmented, it is ad hoc. And we will lobby for that as an organisation, and I know within Women's Aid and other areas, we've got healthy relationships work as well. We must work and work with our partners to make sure that we are enabling those teachers and those children and young people to receive the best form of RSE they can as early as possible. So we're not talking to them after things have happened. We're talking to them consistently from their primary school to their secondary school about what consent means and what healthy relationships is as well. And I lead for campaigns across the UK, joint head of the campaigns in the UK and local communities. I manage here, Northern Ireland, Wales, South West England, London, South East. We are managing campaigns on pornography in Plymouth with parents, because again, what you spoke about before, this is not just about one sector addressing this, this is a whole community response. We have to support parents, have very difficult conversations about things like misogyny, like what is the incel movement, which is, for any of you that know, it's the involuntary celibate movement, which also leans into misogyny and is on the rise across the UK and in Ireland. We just had a documentary last week about it. So we know that we're also having to work with parents and carers who are finding this world very, very complex. You may influence your child. Their online world is going to influence them 10 times more. So we need to support parents and carers to have those conversations around these difficult topics. And as you mentioned, in an age-appropriate way that doesn't scare children and young people. We're leading a campaign across Scotland called Young Women Know. We're with young people to tell us what are the issues at healthy relationships and around young women. We've created safe spaces videos for teachers to help them understand when a young person comes forwards, how do we create a safe space in your school where you know when I come and speak to you that it's actually about quite a sensitive issue. We've also created toolkits, peer-to-peer education around healthy relationships, because it's actually in young people talking to each other. There's also an incredible amount of learning. comes forward, but they have to be safe programs as well. We're running that program in Belfast at the minute. I've obviously abandoned my slides. Sorry, apologies, Nat. And we are looking to bring it to other areas as well. As I said, we do a lot of work. We need a public health approach, and we also need to move beyond awareness raising to behavioural change. And behavioural change means you need programs, you need funded programs. We also need to move away from things that are like, it seemed like a good idea at the time, which is what one of the lecturers from University College London, who did work with us at, of creating posters, creating social media posts. For what end? We must have effective behavioural change intervention programs that are based on the science of psychology and how do you change behaviours, not marketing campaigns. We need to move beyond that, and that takes time, and that's why I welcome everything that's happened today. We must commit to a 5 to 10 year approach in this, not a 1 year approach on this type of work. The online world is definitely very challenging. The issues around pornography, the crossover, the representation of women, the representation of relationships, I would say, and our media is certainly concerning that where our young people are getting the role model around relationships is largely from quite commercialised, inappropriate sources as well. We have to help them understand how to interrogate that. We have to help them understand how to look at that, and that is within our RSE curriculum. There's a gift there. I truly believe too, the safe environment that we talked about, lighting, you were talking about even things like shifts for young people going to work. I think that anything that benefits the safety of a young woman and woman will also be of the benefit to every member of society, whether you're a young man. In Wales, we were hearing about young men who were worried about knife crime. Well, certainly any of the conditions that we described here today should be for older people who are feared of crime. These will benefit every part of our society, so we can't also see this as a silo. This is about creating safety for all our members of our community. None will be excluded if we create these safe places. Well, we need to talk about the issues, and we have to decide how we work with parents and carers, how we work with our workforce, our voluntary sector agencies, our commercial sector. We've talked about some of it today, and it is the start of it today. I say what we do is we provide Childline. We talk to thousands of children every day. We hear about their worries and their concerns, and Childline is there 24 hours a day for any child, and we have volunteers in this city who give up their time and go into that building. You'll see tonight above the exchange, the early morning, listen to children and young people's voices. And I would say to you that is one of the key things here. We cannot design interventions that affect children and young people or women, as you've spoken about, Mari, those with lived experience, unless their voices and their experiences are central to it. I say I'm delighted that the council is already engaged in the child's rights, respect and city work. I think a lot of this can be integrated into other things that you're doing. We are seeing an increase in peer-to-peer abuse as well, harmful sexual behaviour and problematic sexual behaviour. It's not just adults and strangers, it's other children. We don't know all the drivers for that, but what we all must be minded to do is to try and at least, as Maria said, work together to try and work on tenets of this, take pieces together, see what we can do and create dialogue and actions that are meaningful, but it must be long term because we know these situations, as I say, we're now working on this decades, they're thousands of years old, they're decades. We are making differences, but what has happened in the city recently has enabled us to have this spotlight here today. And I say thank you for inviting me here along today. We have an adult helpline as well. If you have any concerns about yourself as a parent or an adult, you can ring our adult helpline. But what I would also say, if you have any concerns that someone you know is a risk to either children or women or whoever, to men, you can ring our helpline as well. We're there. Also, we have to remember there are people who do need looked at by the police and by the criminal justice system. There are perpetrators that need to be also addressed through our criminal justice system in an effective way. And certainly, it's a holistic approach we need to this. And I'm now going to stop talking.
Thank you, Margaret, and apologies for the mix up there. And I'm delighted you were able to join us today. And thank you for the wonderful presentation. Members, I can see Paul Boggs have already indicated to speak, so I will open the floor for questions and comments. Councillor Boggs.
Gurmogat, Avira, and thank you very, very much to everybody who has presented this today. It has been insightful. I suppose to kind of follow on from Councillor Tierney, educational at times, particularly around some of the stuff that we wouldn't be aware of or that you wouldn't even think of. And I think it is important, particularly as men, to at times hold our hands up and say, I wasn't aware, or I didn't know, or I never thought of it from that looking glass or from that perspective before. I think that that's very important. can I thank Margaret, and I'm glad that we gave you the mic and we gave you the platform, because I absolutely agree with everything you have just said. I come from a background of working with children and young people as a former teacher. And when it comes to very challenging issues, and this is a societal issue, and while we have talked about things in previous presentations around infrastructure and around whether we use different materials around building sites or whether we look at lighting up areas, you know, and illuminating them more broadly, and all those different issues, they are important. But at the very crux and core of this is a societal issue, an issue that is brought to us by the people that walk and live around us. And I think that's very, very important to remember, that there are things that we can do to help, and there are things that we can put in place that will allow us to move to a different space. But at the crux of it, it is people that we are dealing with, and those people that we need to deal with going forward. But I think in relation to the children and young people piece, you know, what you say about schools and about getting on to talk to young people, I mean, where do young people learn to read? Where do they learn to write? Where do most people, young people and children, learn to cook? It's in classes when they get to secondary school level. But all of that is done in conjunction with home. You know, you don't learn to read and write in school and then go home and do nothing. You go home with homework, to sit with a parent, hopefully with a parent or with a guardian, and reinforce what you have learnt at school. And I don't see why this, and issues, societal issues, whether that be about mental health, whether it be about racism, sectarianism, violence against women and girls, why we haven't treated that with the same focus and the same vigour as we treat basic learning. And I think that is across society and probably across the globe, that we don't treat these societal issues in the same way of reinforcing learning from home, that what teacher says at school isn't just applicable to school, it's applicable to home. When we talk, you know, Councillor Hutton has talked about domestic violence in the home place. It's applicable to being out in the street, out in the town, out in the play park, particularly from a young age, because nobody is born a racist. Nobody is born either to be violent against women, in my opinion. There are things that are learned or things that are not taught that allow us to enable young people to get to a position where we do keep these things going over and over and over for hundreds of years that we have talked about. Many of the programs which you talked about that you already deliver, I've worked on many of them, you know, in relation to your own body and all that. And I do think that with those programs, the most valuable thing for our teachers in our schools is that they are supported to deliver them by charities and organisations like yourselves. I absolutely agree with you. When teachers come to teaching, they do not go there to be a nurse and a social worker and a second parent and a cook at times and all those things. And when we come out of teacher education, we are not equipped to deal with the societal issues that are being faced. So I think it is important, actually vital, that we get to a space where teachers have the attitudes and the confidence to be able to work in partnership with community and voluntary, with our local agencies in terms of local councils or government agencies and yourselves to deliver on those issues. And then also the joined up approach of home to school and peer to peer. And, you know, it's worrying to know that there are now issues between peer to peer and abuse happening at that young and low level of peers being involved in things that would scare and terrify you, but it is the reality. And I suppose finally, just we do have the tools to do those things. The RSE curriculum is there. I know schools find it at times challenging to maybe make the space and the time for it, but it is there as a building block. It's there as a starting point that we can move and get better at using year on year and child after child. So I just want to thank you for the points that you put on the record today for us. Very, very insightful and informative. And I don't really have any questions, Mayor, but just to put it on the floor that it is so important that we start at a young age and start to educate young people about the issues that we are seeing all too often in our society. So thank you very much again, Margaret and Cormac.
Thank you, Councillor Bog. Councillor McDade?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm conscious that I keep coming in, but every time someone speaks, I have more to say. So I'm just sorry. Thank you so much for your presentation. I've mentioned earlier, I have 3 wee young boys, and one of them has just, not this year, last year, had the top pants at school. And you know what, started such a conversation at home. And he was 6, the other was 4, and the other was 2. But it started a conversation in the house with wee ones to talk about looking after your body and keeping yourself safe. And you know, now if one of them pulls down their trousers, the other one's telling on them straight away, you're not allowed to do that, that's your private. You know, it's such a simple and straightforward way of teaching children about looking after themselves. So I just really wanted to put that out there and say how helpful it was as a parent, because I don't know how to start those conversations. Like Aisling said, it's about having the conversations without scaring them. But I think everything has been covered actually with what Councillor Boggs said there about there's not the same focus on the non-academic learning as what there should be. Do you know, the focus should be on about all these societal changes and all the cultural things that we need to be teaching our young people about respect and about those basic things that we hope most people have. But why do we just assume we have to make sure they're being taught? So I don't have much more to say. I just want to thank you for coming on and for all the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDade. I think it's Councillor Houghton.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Margaret, for the presentation. I'll not keep you long either because I keep coming on as well. But things do pop into your head whenever you're chatting and you're sort of maybe going back into your professional line of work, and then you're coming back to your, you know, it's just, there's a lot being discussed here today and it's brilliant. We could probably stay here to 10 the night. But I agree 100% about the language that needs to be used. And I think as well, it's really important that our language that we pass on to young people, that's where all the misogynistic comments come from. They think it's okay if they hear an adult talking about it. And that's just what happens. But whilst you were talking, Margaret, the whole trauma-informed approach was coming into my head, and ensuring as individuals that we are trauma-informed. Myself and Councillor Guy were at a presentation of an organisation that provided trauma-informed practice in organisations yesterday, presenting certificates. And whilst you were speaking, we do all need to become a trauma-informed society, and taking that on as an individual, whether you're taking that home to your family life, you're bringing it to your workplace, we're bringing it into this chamber. But all that around trauma-informed approaches, it's something that I think us as a council, we would need to explore, and I know we have explored it in the past, but that is also something that can be added to this agenda as well, because it is helpful if we have a trauma-informed society to deal with these societal issues that are popping up left, right and centre. So thank you so much, Margaret. It was great to hear from you.
Thank you, Councillor Houghton. Alderman Guy.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank you for both coming in and for your presentations. For Margaret, very passionate in your presentation there. I thought I was going to ask you, did you need water after there? But Marie as well, I just say thank you for coming on. And you're probably scunnered looking at me the past week or so, because everywhere you seem to go, I seem to bump into you. But listen, I was able to bring my minister down, the health minister, to see, to meet with Murray and see round the Justice Centre. If your ministers, if your MLAs haven't already done it, make an appointment with her to go down and see it. It's very worthwhile, but it's also worthwhile to hear the work that's being done and the work that they want to do. And I think it's important that they're given the finances to do that work, because it's an amazing setup. And she has an amazing team, but they need the help still to get that work pushed out there. Thank you for coming in, Harry. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Guy. Alderman Jose.
Thank you, Mayor, and just very briefly, thanks again for the presentation. I just want to come in full support of Councillor Boggs and his relationship there of the schools and society. And I suppose what we're urging and seeking is an ethos of moral and ethical learning within the school setting, not necessarily in an academic setting, but that ethos within the school. And I would describe it as just bog standard humanity, if our schools can do that in conjunction with the home.
Thank you, Alderman Jose. Councillor Harkin.
Thanks, Mayor, for letting me in, and thank you, Margaret, for such a thorough presentation. And I also just want to acknowledge the decades of work that yourself and others have done without a lot of support, and absolutely vital work that has helped and supported thousands of women, thousands of girls, thousands of families right across this city and elsewhere. And I think that, you know, that's in part what we need to change. This can't be an uphill battle. And part of it is seeing the world as best we can from a women's point of view. And when you begin to look at how the workplace is organised, how the justice system is organised, how the health service is organised, it's not organised on the basis of the way women's lives are organised and what they go through. And I think that's what we have to change. And what you says about RSE, I think, is 100% right. The ad hoc way that RSE is carried out has to be changed if we want to actually support our children from the earliest ages so that they understand what private is and what their rights are. And children can understand that stuff because we do it in our house. And they understand what their privates are from 2 years old and that it's only them touches them and nobody else touches them. And I think that that's, and look, there has been blocks to having them conversations. People have stopped us, stopped women's organisations, stopped society from having conversations about sex, about consent, about the nature of relationships for many, many decades. And I think what we have to do is remove those blocks in order for people to actually unlearn them and also to support younger people as well. So that I see that as absolutely, absolutely vital. And I think what you said about, the way in which commercialization impacts children and women, we have to talk about the commodification of women's bodies. We have to talk about the objectification of women's bodies as well. We have to talk about the fact when women don't have ownership over their bodies, well, other people can have ownership over their bodies or believe that they can. And I think that this is all, getting to the roots of this issue. So I think a lot of the stuff that you went through, that's the sort of stuff that has to become mainstream and normalised as much as we can. And I think our council has to do everything it can to play a role in making that happen. But thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Members, I do not see anybody else indicating, and I just wonder if Margaret would like to give final remarks before we move on to the next speakers. No? Okay. Thank you for your presentation. And I will now move to our last speakers of the day. And I think we have Chief Inspector PSNI Yvonne McManus and Chief Superintendent Gillian Kinney.
Sorry, I have my notes sitting there and then that's the slide. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak today. And thank you for all the contributors so far today. It's been incredibly insightful in what has been, a really challenging week. So I think, first of all, to just give you an update in relation to the ongoing investigation in relation to the two incidents that were reported on the 1st and 2nd of November weekend just passed. And those investigations are progressing. They are being led by our public protection branch, specially trained detectives within that branch are leading those investigations. As I highlighted in the press appeal for information in respect of both of them, they are investigating a link between both incidents or both reports. But they were not linked to the two reports from the weekend before, which were also subject to press appeals. And two suspects were identified in relation to the weekend prior, and one of those suspects appeared charged before court last week. That investigation continues, but to date, we have not had an arrest in relation to either of those reports. In response to the very real and palpable concern and fear across the district as a result of those reports, I have put in a series of key tactical patrolling priorities across the district. They have been ongoing since the weekend and they will continue to be. I am using every range of tactics available to me, including high visibility policing, the use of drones, police bikes, motorbikes, and other assets across the district at key times and key areas to help reassure people in those areas. I've been out myself and I can tell you there is no greater accountability than nursery-age children asking you if you've caught the bad man yet. What I would like to say is that we are not experiencing a spike or an increase in reports, but we are really concerned at the incidents at the weekend because they are so unusual in their nature. And that's why we felt, we needed that help from members of the public to try and identify the person or people responsible. I want to also emphasise that the victims in all of our cases are being supported both by the detectives in our public protection branch, but also our own neighbourhood officers. And that's really important, and that will continue. So from an overall perspective, for us, we absolutely welcome this scrutiny. We, as an organisation, launched the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy over 2 years ago. We were the first to do it. That is how important this is for us. We welcome the scrutiny and we welcome the accountability. I have it here locally at our Police and Community Safety Partnership. We have it at the Policing Board. We have it through all those mechanisms. But also, it has been a priority for me since I arrived here in this district and will continue to be. And we've been building on those relationships and engagements across this district for some time. And we hope now to be able to lean into those to really help and drive and push this forward because it is absolutely where we need to be going. So our wider strategy, when it was created, dealt with 3 key themes: building trust and confidence, the relentless pursuit of perpetrators, and safer spaces in the public and online. And why that's relevant to our conversation today, I think it feeds into all of the contributions that we've had so far this afternoon. So if I talk a bit about the safer spaces to give you some, I hope, reassurance about what we as an organisation on a more strategic level have been doing, but then also how that has been developed and taken forward here in Derry City and Strabane District. So in safer spaces, we prioritised the establishment of a safer socialising steering group, which I sit on for the organisation. It includes members of the Security Industry Authority, the Department of Justice, the Executive Office, White Ribbon, NI, TransLink, and Hospitality Ulster, and is actually chaired by Hospitality Ulster. This gives us a really key link into key people across or public spaces, people socialising, people being in the public arena, and how we can then drive initiatives like Ask for Angela through those mechanisms. And across Northern Ireland now, over 300 premises have signed up to Ask for Angela. We regularly test those through using the Security Industry Authority, who are really significantly involved in supporting our work, driving the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. And they will do spot checks at regular times with licensed premises who have signed up for Ask for Angela, so as they are checking with staff who work there, do you actually know what Ask for Angela is? And that applies here in this district also. On our own neighbourhood teams have worked alongside them in those kind of initiatives. Event planning was a really key pillar in that strategy. So when we plan large scale events across the organisation, we violence against women and girls and what we can do to support people in the public space and to identify early predatory and concerning behaviours is a key tenet of how we plan those events, and that goes on right across the organisation, including here in the district. And I'll use the example just very recently of the Maritime Festival, where we ran an operation with taxi firms, just providing support and making sure that everything was regulated in that space. And Halloween, where we, for the first time in Northern Ireland, deployed plainclothes police officers alongside our uniformed colleagues to identify concerning and predatory behaviours. And that worked very successfully, and it was led by Yvonne on Halloween night. There were up to 30,000 people in the city on Halloween night. It's a massive number of people to manage in a small area, and we thought it was a really positive step forward in how we keep people safe by identifying early concerning behaviours, potential predatory behaviours in public spaces. So as everybody can go about their time feeling safe and empowered to enjoy their time out. We also have a Design Out Crime lead in the organisation, Chris, who I've brought along with me today. So we've talked today about lighting, infrastructure, how we can do things to improve in that space. So Chris's team, a small team, has in the past 2 years since we launched the strategy, delivered Design Out Crime activity or given Design Out Crime feedback in relation to over 260 areas. So if you were building a new university, how could we tell you in the design phase of that how best to design and build that with safety in mind? A new area, a park area or something like that, or much smaller infrastructures. How do you best do that? So at the beginning, you're not providing opportunities for people to feel unsafe. And that we continue to roll that out across the organisation, and Chris's team is available to continue that work. And will work here locally with us in the district. So those are a few examples within the Safer Spaces pillar of the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, which have been driven through across the organisation and locally here over the past 2 years. In respect of our relentless pursuit of perpetrators, you will, I'm sure, be aware of the wide-ranging legislative changes that were brought in, championed by our Head of Public Protection Branch, Lindsay Fisher, and the rollout of those across Northern Ireland, which have really significantly helped us as a police service in relation to the powers that we have to deal with people, both in the domestic setting and violence against women and girls. So over these past 2 years, we've been working hard to build that trust and confidence, not only on what we can do externally with the public, but with ourselves as an organisation, our behaviours and how that is perceived by the public, and making sure that we're getting that right. So I want to reassure you that we are absolutely open to the conversation and being held accountable for this. So year 3 and beyond, we're really, we're very grateful now to have a seat at the table with the Executive Office's Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, and to be able to be a key partner within that. I welcome the opportunity to have these conversations. I welcome the challenge to what we're doing here locally, and if we can do it better, differently, join up better around making sure everybody is aware of all of the programs that we're running. Our crime prevention officer here locally in the district runs many events with local groups in your communities, and I'm quite sure you've all been along to some of them and has been doing that for some time. We linked in with the university throughout Freshers month and have had some really positive feedback from them there this morning, just myself, just in relation to our engagement at that time and now in this present week to try to help people with the concerns that they understandably have. And that will go on and continue to go, has been going on and will continue to go on as we move forward here. We have applied for some funding because we understand that there are many more people now in the community asking for some help. And we have applied for some funding to be able to equip the crime prevention officer with a small pot of product so we can continue doing that over the coming weeks. And I think what I welcome the most is the support that I think is in the room to collectively take this forward and to keep moving this forward, because there's been so much work done in this space already, and to have the voices heard of women and girls who have been victims and lived in fear for some time. I was the detective inspector in the rape crime unit for this area over 10 years ago, and like the other contributors have commented, you know, we were dealing with these issues back then, and they continue. So our advice, and you will have heard me say it, I'm sure, during this week, is if you are concerned about anybody's behaviours, report it. If you think someone is acting inappropriately, tell someone. And if you think somebody is acting in a predatory way, tell someone. Predators should not feel safe to act in our communities. That is the message. Predators should not feel safe to act in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Gillian. Members, I will now open for comments and questions, and I will bring in Alderman Middleton.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in. And also thank you to Chief Superintendent Gillian Kearney and Chief Inspector Yvonne McManus for your presentation and also your time and being here today. It's greatly appreciated. As a council, we must do everything we can, but also we must stand with the PSNI to bring the perpetrators to justice. On behalf of the DUP, I thank you and your officers for your tireless work and the current cases, as well as your ongoing work to keep our communities safe. We also acknowledge and welcome your high-profile presence in the media and on the ground, which has brought greater reassurance to many women, which has been told to myself and many colleagues, as well as family members who have then brought it back to myself as well. So again, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your time. And I know certainly on behalf of our party and hopefully the full council, we commit to working alongside you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Middleton. Councillor Jackson?
Yeah, Grandma Vilvera, and thanks to Gillian and Yvonne for coming today. And Mayor, I suppose I may start with maybe an overall comment in relation to yourself. It's great to see that you were able to chair this meeting today, even though you're at the other side of the world. But you're with yourself and all of the speakers today. It demonstrates the powerful leadership, more importantly, the powerful female leadership that we have in the city and district. And I think that's been demonstrated by all of the speakers today. And I know right throughout, you know, whether it's at council officer level, political parties, or in our education sector, or in our community sector, every sector in our society is led by strong female voices, and that is something that we should all, well, I'm certainly inspired by and very proud of. And it's I just wanted to make that point that it's fantastic that you were able to take time out of a very busy schedule to be able to chair this meeting today. But in relation to the report that we've received from Gillian, I would welcome it, and I was was reluctant to touch on any of the individual instances that have happened that has caused widespread fear in our community, because we know that this isn't it shouldn't be isolated to individual incidents. It is a societal problem. But I think it's only fair that because we do have the scrutiny piece within the PCSPs, there can be challenging conversations. I know in relation to the incident on the 2nd of November, I would know the victim and their family very well, and I've been speaking to them. And one of the first things that they said to me very early on Saturday afternoon was the response from the PSNI couldn't have been better. The swift response, the supportive nature was really appreciated by the victim and her family. So I think it's only fair, whilst we can have critical conversations, it's important to reflect the positive experience of victims of obscene actions. So, but it's and the very fact that we're having a meeting like this today saddens me greatly. And it's not first time, but like it was only a few months ago that we've had another meeting. We had another special council meeting because there was another section of our community that didn't feel safe in our streets. And that's something that if we know that, like we can talk amongst ourselves. I think there's broad agreement that violence against women and girls, or sectarian violence, or racist violence there's a zero tolerance approach. And I know the PSNI go to great lengths. They challenge hate crime and they challenge violence against women, and we will all support that in any way we can. But it's when with the very fact that we have to have this meeting, they have these conversations, they have a platform, they allow the fantastic organizations, they express the work that they're doing. It's disgraceful, the very fact that we have to do this. But what it demonstrates is that we need a real step change in relation to how we tackle the problem. Finally, we've got a violence against women strategy, but it needs to be resourced. The PSNI are at the front line in terms of supporting victims of crime and bringing perpetrators to justice. The PSNI equally need to be adequately resourced. So there needs to be a fundamental change, and hopefully meetings like this, conversations like this can lead to a step change in relation to where resources are being placed, and we finally see a society where everybody feels safe, and we don't have to have meetings like this again. But again, Gillian, Yvonne, thanks for everything that you do. And it's great that you are able to join us today and give the presentation. Right, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson, and thank you for your kind words. I think this is a personal commitment, but also a collective dedication from all our members to make our city and district safer for all, and thank you for all your leadership. I will now bring in Councillor Alderman Jose.
Mayor, could I just come in there, and Yvonne McManus would like to come in there just to answer Councillor Jackson, please.
Okay, no problem at all.
It wasn't specifically to Chris. I suppose you brought up you're off the hook, Chris. You brought up the victim, and I suppose you know we can all sit and talk in this room about how violence against women and girls. I suppose if you were a victim and you're sitting, you'll be wondering, right, what are we actually going to do about it? And I suppose the 10 recommendations, I really welcome that, because as a victim, you'd be thinking, right, what could we do to prevent that happening to me again, but also what can we do to prevent it happening to somebody else? And so I really welcome that. And there was a part of that about, having an open discussion, because we know that a lot of incidents don't get reported to us for lots of different reasons. So I would certainly welcome that going forward, that women are able to come in and have discussions with police in whatever sort of platform that looks like, and even identifying barriers to reporting, or it could be lots of other issues within society that women don't want to report for lots of reasons. So I welcome that. Probably for me going forward, there's a lot of long-term challenges around funding. We've talked about that, but for victims, what's going to come out of the meeting today? What will be practical? What can you go back and tell the groups that you've engaged with all week intensively to get their input? What can you bring back to them? So I think that's really important, because we could probably sit here all day talking. We're all on the same page in relation to violence against women and girls, but what can we collectively deliver together? And Margaret's talked about all the amazing work. Mari talked about all the amazing work. Catherine, you're here from the Women's Centre. Everybody's working in their silo, and this is what I really appreciate with today. We all need to come together and make sure that everybody knows what everybody's doing, so we're not duplicating as well, because we don't have the money to do the same thing twice, and that connection and communication is there, so that we're not missing anything collectively.
Thank you, Yvonne. The next person who has indicated to speak is Alderman Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. And Yvonne, Julian, thank you very much for your presentation. It's great to have you here. I'm sure you would have found disappointing a comment in the very first presentation, one of the comment boxes. Report to the PSNI, they won't do anything about it, but it's good to get things on record. I'm sure you would be extremely disappointed that comment is there. And I think what you were talking about there was report, and report ASAP. Should it be 999, get it reported. And I fully would endorse that. You mentioned that this current situation is not a spike, but that the two particular situations cause concern, so we say additional concern. So I wonder how the figures in Derry City and Strabane compare to the rest of Northern Ireland. Are they above or below? And I do want to praise the quick response that, obviously from a distance where I live, re the identification of the need for visibility. And, that visibility, I believe, was effective and is something that I would urge should be there all the time, should be visible all the time. But of course, as Chris has alluded to, that is resource intensive, and perhaps results in displacement of personnel. I'm not sure, whether personnel from my neck of the woods were drafted in to assist with that displacement. So I'm wondering, has there been, in your opinion, sufficient support from headquarters in the situation that you have found yourself in, or have you had to deal with it on an entirely localized basis? That would be a concern. And, I know that the Chief Con has looked about and said we need to get up to Patton levels again, and I fully support that. Indeed, I would remind the Chief Constable that Patton included community support officers in his numbers. We have community safety wardens. I'm not sure how well deployed they were within your response to a particular situation. So, the issue, has there been, in your opinion, sufficient support from the Chief Con and from the Policing Board and allocation of resources? And the final one, I didn't know about Chris's situation there, the infrastructural planning out of areas of potential danger, I suppose. And I find that quite pleasing to know that it's there. And I would hope that in schemes that council are taking forward, that we be mindful of that, whether it be a greenway or a play park or whatever, that is something that we can engage on and ensure that areas that we create are safe areas as well. But thanks very much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Jose. Can I bring him Councillor Tierney? Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Gillian and Yvonne for coming here today. This is, as I've already said, a very important conversation. We have women's groups from right across this district represented here, and very powerful presentations by everyone. And if we're serious about how we're going to try to tackle this, the police are a key aspect of that. And whilst the focus needs to be on trying to prevent any further attacks, and visibility and all of that is great. That will provide confidence for people when they're out and about. And that is, from what I'm hearing from talking to people over this last couple of days, that is a lot of what's lacking, is that confidence in knowing that when women want to go out for a walk or when they're about the city centre, that they're safe and that there are people there who are looking out for them and who they're able to approach. So I think that's fantastic. I think in relation to some of the boards that we're talking about were set up by the PSNI in relation to try and work with people across the hospitality sector, for example, is fantastic as well. And some of the spot checks that you were talking about that you are involved in is key as well, because it's okay having this strategy of ask for Angela, but if the staff and the premises don't know what that means, then it's no good to no one. So from our point of view, we want to see more police on the ground. I think Alderman Hussey's question around support that you're getting from PSNI headquarters. I don't want this story just to be contained within Derry Strabane. For every organisation who has spoken here today, one of the key aspects to trying to tackle this is appropriate funding for their own level of expertise, and that includes the PSNI. And I know, and I've been listening for a long time to the Chief Constable after Chief Constable talking about the lack of resources within the PSNI. They need to be, in my opinion, focused here, and that we try and tackle this situation. So I would like to know, in regards to the support that you're receiving from headquarters, what that looks like and how long that is likely to continue, because people will be socialising more in the run up to Christmas. It's a bigger and busier time with staff parties and whatnot. What level of support have you got there? Because I think that's going to be a vital time. And for women, particularly across this district, who are already feeling nervous now, that level of anxiety is going to be increased at that particular time. So we need to be giving them that confidence that there are police officers there on the ground working and trying to identify predators and what's going on. So what does that support look like in the coming weeks and months? But again, thank you for what you're doing. I haven't spoken to any of the victims like Councillor Jackson, but we can only take what we're hearing. That would have been really comforting for that particular family, and I'm sure there's other families across this district who could relate to that. So thank you for that, and thank you for all that you're doing and trying to protect people. Please keep it up. Please push out that message that there are police officers about. It does give people confidence, no matter what issue you're talking about, whether it be antisocial behaviour or violence against women and girls. It gives people in communities confidence when they see the yellow jackets out and about in their communities, despite what other people might say. You also talked about the design out crime type of intervention that is there. I think that sounds really, really good. I know that through your Ballyarnett neighbourhood team that there was conversations around the units down in Skeg over recent weeks, and that has really, really worked. And when
police officers actually identifying things for you, well, that shouldn't be happening. You know, it is really, really helpful. But how widely known is that scheme to developers, to, for example, the university, to housing associations and people like that, where that can be done before planning is applied for, before drawings are done and all of that? How widely known is that? Because I think that's really, really important as well. But again, on behalf of the SDLP, thank you very much for your attendance here today, and thank you very much for all the work that you're involved in trying to keep people safe across this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Members, I do not have anybody else who have indicated to speak. So can I ask Gillian if they're still in the chamber to maybe just give final remarks, and then we can move on. Oh, do I see Councillor Harkin? You're looking to come in?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think that people should have a good experience when they go to the PSNI, and that's positive to hear that people are reporting that. And I think a lot of people will be looking to the police right now in order to ensure that this doesn't happen. But I am going to say a few critical things, because it has to be said that, look, we have a government that I believe is actually creating the conditions for this to fester, because it's not a new situation that we have, and in fact it's getting worse in a lot of ways. So and we look at not just the attacks that happened here, the domestic violence levels, but also the femicide. And a lot of people think that government is doing very little, and I think government will sometimes say there's our police response right now, and while we have deteriorating situations, the problem gets worse, and the only solution is a policing solution. And I don't think that that is going to actually solve the problem. And we have a context too where, look, honestly, most of the times when we're talking about the PSNI in here, it's, you know, when Black Lives Matter happened, we ended up with a situation where the ombudsman had to view what happened as institutional racism and a failure. When we look at, you know, the harassment of Palestine solidarity activists, for example, for doing peaceful civil disobedience. When we look at like the harassment of picket lines when workers are going on strike. Example after example where, you know, the police are on the wrong side, in my opinion. So I do think that, and we look at the situation with Sarah Everard, which, you know, a lot of people I've been talking to are referencing what happened to Sarah Everard, what happened to Katie Simpson here in our city. And that's why people will say there's not necessarily that confidence. So I do think that the way that we are going to address this in the end, and it's not about an abstract thing, it is through, you know, there's a lot of initiatives in there that the council has to act on. It's RSE, and it's addressing the bigger societal issues. We have a massive mental health crisis that isn't getting properly addressed, that I think is a contributing factor to a lot of this. So I think that the state will, I think, prioritise the law and order response, but I actually think that it is going to be all the other things that we are talking about that is going to see this problem properly addressed.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Can I now bring in Yvonne McManus?
You're all right, Yvonne.
Is it
I was earlier.
Yvonne looking to come in?
No, it's myself, Chair Gillian.
Thank you, Gillian. Okay, come on in.
Okay. Thank you. So in relation to the overall organisational statistics, Councillor Hussey, we are consistent with the organisational figures at the minute, in that there is a slight reduction in reports of violence against women and girls incidents. But, you know, we know that these things are underreported. But our statistics aren't showing any kind of different pattern to the rest of the organisation. In relation to support from headquarters, you've referenced a couple of things in there. So the Chief Constable has been very clear in his speaking around the resourcing position of the organisation at the minute. And I firmly support that, in that we should be sitting at a resourcing level that was recommended by the Patton report. But I have been since the weekend having conversations with my colleagues in relation to supporting us here in the district around our response to the events of the past 2 weeks, and to be able to support that appropriately. So I have had support from our operational support department, or our support unit, roads policing, interceptors. We're trying to promote that on our social media pages as well, so people can see. You may not have been there at the very minute that the resource was there, but we want people to be reassured that across the piece we're using a range of tactics to be able to do that. And I will continue to reach into that support at the centre as the days and weeks continue here. We have already been planning our Christmas nighttime economy approach, and we will run an operation throughout that time, which will focus on the nighttime economy across the district, to make sure people feel reassured and supported in the nighttime economy. I do also want to emphasise that the neighbourhood team here in the city centre, alongside partners, CCI, the council, have achieved purple flag status for the city this year, which is a high threshold to get over in relation to the initiatives and the safety in the city centre. So in relation to the design out crime question then, I think the fact that it's been used over 260 times now in the past 2 years is a good trajectory for us in relation to having confidence that people are aware of it. Chris could probably speak more about how that's promoted externally from the organisation.
We cannot really hear. Is Chris anywhere near a mic?
So, yeah.
A lot of the projects, all social housing projects, must achieve design of crime gold standard. Okay, it's part of the contract on that. A lot of major projects within Northern Ireland are also, it's built into that contract as well. So we're going, but we also encourage a lot of the developers and the councils, etc., to come to as early as possible to discuss the different projects that you're doing, especially in the city, but throughout Northern Ireland. So we encourage them to make use of us at the earliest possible time. And there's also an onus on people when we do come out, especially as you're saying about the city here, on the safer places. We will come out and do an assessment, and then there'll be an onus on whoever's asking us, in this case the council, to actually implement those recommendations. So for design of crime gold standard, we will certify it and inspect it. For anything else that you ask for us, there'll be an onus on yourselves to actually implement them, and that's the accountability from that side.
Thank you, Chris. Gillian, do you want to conclude now?
Yes, and just in relation to Councillor Harkin's point, I think it's important just to re-emphasise, we launched our Violence Against Women and Girls strategy because as a service we fully recognised that we can't fix what are largely societal issues in isolation, but we know we play an absolutely vital role in that. So that's why, in addition to outlining the specific actions that we as a service have taken and will continue to take, we've also set out how we intend to support the work undertaken by partners across the public sector and wider society to make sure that that is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian, and thank you also to Yvonne for being there today and for the update that you have provided for us. Members, I'm conscious we've been sitting for 3 hours now, and I wonder if you want a 5 minutes comfort break and come back, or do you want us to just continue? Alderman Guy, I will depend on you to give me the answer.
Mayor, everybody's happy to roll on with it here.
Perfect. Thank you, members. I think just to thank every presenter who have presented to us. It's been very informative and actually very moving. And members, we've all heard from the women working directly with survivors of violence against women and girls, and I'm going to call them survivors instead. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Alderman Guy?
Councillor Tierney was looking in there.
Councillor Tierney, you're looking to come in?
Yep, thank you, Mayor. And again, look, I want to just thank everybody for their presentations today. I think this meeting has been really insightful, and I really don't want to hold anyone back. I do have a proposal which I have shared with all elected members, and I've sent to the committee staff. I'm not going to speak to it, Mayor, because I think we've had a long enough conversation, so I'm happy just to propose the proposal, which does include the 10 asks from that we've been presented with earlier on, but it's now on the screen, so I'm happy to propose.
I will second that, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney and Councillor McDade. Members, are you content with the motion?
Mayor, just to speed up the process, the Sinn Féin group and within council support the motion.
Thank you.
And similarly, Mayor, UP.
Thank you, Alderman
The
Jose.
DUP as well, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank
DUP
you,
supported.
members. Thank you, members. Do we have anybody who wants to show their support who has not yet presented?
Be quiet,
Alderman Middleton, please mute your mic. Okay, I am going to presume everyone is happy with the motion and it has been passed unanimous. Okay, thank you, members. We do have another proposal on the floor from Alderman Cook.
Mayor, I'm going to be doing the proposal for Alderman Cook because she couldn't stay with us today as she had another engagement. So if you bear with me, I'll bring that up and I'll read it out. Firstly, can I make apologies for my mic earlier on? I was on a telephone call, so apologies about that. And can I also say, well done and brilliant presentations today, very insightful. And as someone else alluded to, that was very, very moving. So I just want to say that before I move on to the motion. So Alderman Cook has said, in light of the recent attacks in the city, this council needs to take action. One way of doing this is to increase lighting, especially where there is no...
Alderman McMorris, before you go on, can I ask for a seconder for that motion, please? Thank you. Seconded by Janice. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks very much for that. What I say, we're get this back up again. Drumahoe Walking Park is where one of the dreadful attacks took place and there's no lighting in the park. Chelsea previously had inquired about the lights at this park and was informed that planning had been lodged and that council had hoped to include this within the Glendermot Shared Space Peace Plus application. As this now is no longer viable, Alderman Cook asks that council urgently look at providing lighting in this walking park and any other walkway within the city that has no lighting. The dark nights are here, and with numerous attacks on women in a few weeks, we need to be proactive in addressing this. Londonderry is known as a place to come for Halloween. We don't want it to be known as an unsafe place for women and girls. Given the urgency of the matter and that women's lives and safety are at risk, and that planning permission has already been passed for this lighting, I'm hoping the proposal is in front of you. So Alderman Cook proposes that this council urgently installs lighting in Drumahoe District Park. This council should also call in all the relevant agencies who deliver services to women and girls to guide this council in creating a city and district that is a welcome and safe place in the evenings as well as during the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Members, I will ask if there is anyone who is voting against this motion or have some comments, but please make it brief. Okay, Alderman Middleton, you're looking to come in? And Councillor Jackson? Alderman Middleton? You're muted if you're looking to come in.
Hi, Mayor. Thanks for letting me in. I'm not against. I'm for the motion. I just wanted to apologise for the noise. I couldn't. It froze. I couldn't get it to mute. So apologies for that.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, Mayor, I do feel that it's a wee bit strange that we're having a full council meeting and there's no legal representation at the top table, because from reading the proposals in front of us, it was encapsulated within the asks that of the previous motion. So it would have been useful to have a legal opinion of whether or not this is a valid proposal. But I know that just in relation to the proposal that's in front of us, I know council have already committed to installing the lights at Drumahoe Park. The fact that it was included in the Peace Plus application demonstrates council's commitment and that they provide lights as part of, and they upgrade that particular facility. So on that perspective, and given the fact that I'm assuming that a proposal on the floor of this chamber doesn't, because I know that there's other projects on the capital working group that are working list that council have also committed to. One of them was also a part of that Peace Plus application, and so you would hope that a motion from the floor doesn't supersede or prioritise one capital project over another. But given the fact that council, this is an existing council commitment, we are fully supportive of it. But just as long as the process in terms of drawing down the funding is carried through in the same way as every other capital project. But again, it's a bit strange that we're in this situation where we're having a special meeting with no legal, full council meeting with no legal representation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Harkin?
Very briefly, Mayor, look, I think that ask number 4 in the 10 recommendations appears to me to cover this issue, because it calls for improved lighting across the district, and I would see that as applying to the Drumahoe Park, and we certainly need it in many places. But I won't oppose this. I fully support it, so I'm voting yes for it. I appreciate what Councillor Jackson said as well. I think that we want to be, as a council, be as immediate and urgent as we can. So I think if we can support this and then find a way then to move this forward as quickly as we can, along with the other initiatives that the council are going to be trying to take, I think that's going to be the best way to move it forward. And I have to leave, so I want to register my support, but I have to be somewhere at 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Thank you. Councillor Tierney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Jackson in relation to the previous motion that I had proposed, and I want to just read out the last paragraph, or the last 2 paragraphs, sorry. Council further agrees to work proactively with all other councils to establish and implement best practice across its facilities. It manages to enhance safety measures and ensure that women and girls are safe in all public spaces. And Council further endorses the 10 key actions presented by the Foyle Women's Information Network and will present a report to the next appropriate committee with recommendations and a timeline for implementation. That, in my mind, covers what is on the screen. I understand why Alderman Cook and Alderman McMorris are highlighting Drumahoe District Park. Although there are other parks across the district where this incident could very easily have happened there. Councillor McDade regularly talks about the lack of lighting at the Bay Park. Ballyarnett Country Park is another one, and I'm sure there's others across the district, and I don't think we need to be getting into a prioritisation of it. I would prefer that we see a report come back, as Councillor Harkin has said. Point 4 in the 10 key asks is talking about improved lighting and CCTV across the district. That would include that's why I feel it's in it. I don't want to be in a position where anything is being opposed here, because I think we've had a very useful conversation this afternoon. I would maybe slightly suggest that, given the fact that we included in the original proposal, which was accepted, is the improved lighting and CCTV across the district, whilst the report coming back to a relevant committee, that we may want to put this proposal on hold until we get that report and then look at how we carry it forward, because I don't think we want to be going out of here today with any argument or dispute around a particular area. It might be better that we agree that we get the report and then we look at the specific areas as we go forward then. Thank you. Maybe that's an appeal to the proposers, because I genuinely don't want to oppose anything here today.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Alderman McMorris?
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. And can I just say that Alderman Cook had brought this proposal in at Governance and Strategic Planning the other day, and she was told to hold it off until to bring it forward to this meeting. And so her proposal was in prior to this meeting even taking place. So while I'm not going to be objecting to what they say, it is contained within the 10 actions. But we have to be mindful that there was no chairperson's business on this meeting, and we were told that we had to hold off until the end of the meeting. So I just want to put that forward, because it's not fair to say we can't discuss this proposal or not discuss it, but you know that it's part of another proposal that was brought before it, because this one here was brought before any other proposal. But I just want to put that on record, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. I agree that this was actually tabled and deferred to this meeting, but I'm conscious that it has also been covered, like what all members have said. So members, there is a suggestion, and would like to see from yourself, Alderman McMorris, would you rather we vote on this motion now, or would you rather we pause it and wait for the report that is coming to Council?
Mayor, I don't think there's any dissenting voices within the chamber in regards to this or the other proposal. So I think we just go on both of them, you know, on their own merit. And, you know, we're all happy to propose any actions that's put forward today in light of the serious nature of what we're discussing. So I think that it should remain on the floor, and we just vote on both together.
Okay, members, I'll come back to yourselves then. Can I just presume that we are all happy to endorse this proposal, and we'll work around all the key asks and bring a report back to Council? Okay, I do not see anybody saying no.
Mayor, I would like to know the outworkings of it before we agree. And as Councillor Jackson said, there's no legal representation here. We're being asked to spend money in one area, and I understand that. But, you know, Council urgently installs lights. That's okay in Drummond. I just feel uncomfortable with no legal aspect here.
Mayor, the proposal actually says about Drumahoe and other areas. It doesn't specifically mention just one area. So, you know, we're happy for a paper to be brought back. Alderman Cook was basically highlighting the fact that the attack happened in one of the unlit areas, and that's why that was brought forward. You know, and can I say, if there's no legal representation for this proposal, there's also no legal representation for the other proposal as well.
Thank you, Alderman McMorris. I can see Councillor Jackson. No, Councillor Barr, you're looking to come in?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a suggestion. Could I suggest just that we take this proposal forward pending the city solicitor's judgment on it? So we take it through today because he's not here, and then at the next available opportunity, he can give us his opinion on whether it is or not should be substantive as a motion at this council meeting, just to speed things along, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. I see Councillor Leonard looking to come in.
Mayor, it's myself, Councillor Norris. I was going to say the same as Councillor Barr, but Alderman McMorris, your proposal doesn't say for the rest of the district. It just says Drumahoe Park. Now, maybe you want to change that for the whole district, but it only says Drumahoe.
Alderman McMorris, would you like to amend your motion, or do you still want to keep it that way? Which means I will now have to call for a vote.
Sorry, I couldn't get the volume on there, but yeah, I would like to add it, please.
Can I get a seconder for that?
I'll second that, Mayor Jason Barr.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Members, to move this forward, are you content that it moves forward, or do you want me to call for a vote?
Mayor, can I just maybe advise, in the absence of legal opinion, I think there's an unfair onus on the meeting and making a financial commitment without a full report being scoped out and brought back to members. And I suppose also just to point out that we are seeing part of what I believe is the overall context of a motion. It stops it as well as during the day. So I think maybe in terms of presenting the motion, there may be some information that's actually been omitted, which would mean we wouldn't be considering in the full context what your intent is as a proposer.
Thank you, Karen. Members, I think I will have to call for a vote for this because the next option is to ask Alderman McMorris to withdraw the proposal, but I'm not sure if she will be prepared to do that. Who has used the Guildhall chair? Is that Alderman Guy?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Look, could I suggest that on what Councillor Jackson said, I understand what they're saying here in the proposal. We don't have any legal representation at this meeting here. I know what they're saying about your own, Councillor Tierney, as well, but it's more of a sort of, in general, that we will work to achieving those 10 reasons. Now, going back to Councillor Jackson, I totally agree. It is already on the capital build list. I think they talked about the lights that actually stay on for a certain time and then switch off as they pass them. So I can see where Alderman Cook and Alderman McMorris are coming for with this, but I feel that we should just bring a paper back and the relative committee, and then by all means bring this up again at it. But I feel that now, because there is a monetary ask on council, that this isn't the time or the place to basically bring this up. And I apologise that because it is my own area and I know how much lighting is needed in that area. However, there's processes on council that has to be followed. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, members, I can appreciate that it is very difficult for us to make a decisive decision, but I understand that we need legal advice. And based on everything that has been said, I think I'm inclined to take that decision to ask for a paper or to defer this to the Capital Working Group. And I hope you're all content with that.
Mayor, I'm happy enough if there's a paper brought forward in regards to the matter and it can be discussed at great length. As I said, it was brought forward at GSP and basically Alderman Cook was told to bring it forward here today. So I'll speak to her, but at this stage, in order to move proceedings on, we're happy that a paper be brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman McMorris, for that. Councillor Jackson, are you looking to come in?
Yeah, Mayor, can I just very briefly, whenever I raised the concerns around the lack of legal representation, I just want to make it very clear that this isn't the fault of the proposer of the motion. I think the proposer of the motion, both proposers brought this forward in good faith, and they can't be held responsible for the fact that there isn't legal representation here. So I just wanted to make that clear at this stage. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Members, if you can indulge me for a minute just before we conclude the meeting. I have received a message from the First Minister and I would like to convey that message because as Councillor Jackson had alluded earlier, we have collective leadership and I am delighted that the First Minister was looking to come to the rally today, but due to a family emergency, she is not able to attend. She has contacted me directly to read her statement and to ensure that the women of Derry know of her full support and the commitment of the Executive Office to working together across the Executive to do everything that they can to achieve the vision of a changed society where women and girls are free from all forms of gender-based violence, abuse, and harm. I wanted to make sure that is registered because the First Minister contacted me directly to ensure that that is done. The second thing I would like to do before we leave is really to acknowledge the work from our own community. Since the last 1 week, we have been working very hard and mobilizing, and I want to congratulate on record Councillor McDade for her speedy actions that she took in mobilizing all of us for a rally today, and also to some of the businesses that have come together to support, like Unit 7. And this is an issue that affects everyone, as we have said, and it is great to see the whole community coming together to address this issue. So thank you so much to all of you members for your patience, for being here until this time, and for responding in very short notice. That is the leadership that is required, and I really appreciate on behalf of all of us and the whole city. Thank you very much. And if there's nobody else who wants to talk, I will now adjourn this meeting. Thank you, members. Leave the meeting.